Chapter 1 Qingyun. Qingyun Mountains lofty and towering, dominating the central plains. The northern side had a great river, Hongchuan, the south had an important town, Heyang City, guarding the world's throat, its position extremely important. Qingyun Mountains undulating for 100 miles, ranges of summits rising, there were 7 that were the highest, towering into the clouds. In the usual days white clouds could be seen covering from the middle of the mountains, obscuring the real height of the mountains. Qingyun Mountains covered densely with forests, waterfalls galloping from cliffs, rare birds and animals, many existed, the landscape perilous and high, well known all over the world. But even more famous, was the cultivated sect on this mountain, Qingyun sect. Qingyun sect had a long history, it had been 2,000 over years since the sect was formed, and was the leader of the 2 factions, good and evil. It was said that the founder of the sect was a Zhonghu fortune teller, down on his luck for half of his life, soured by the loss of one's hopes. When he was 49 years old, roaming the world, he passed by Qingyun Hill and at one glance, noticed the beauty and potential of the place, gathering the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was definitely an excellent place. And so there and then ascended the mountain, endured the hardships and cultivated and trained, not long, actually found a secret cave deep inside Qingyun Mountain and in it, obtained a nameless ancient scroll. In it recorded numerous enigma skills, profound and dry but had infinite powers and wonders. The fortune teller receiving such rare encounter, wholeheartedly trained. In a fleeting 20 years, he had a small achievement and left. After a few tussles in the Zhonghu, although not able to dominate the world but he became a powerful man. Gradually on Qingyun Hill, he started a sect, named Qingyun. As the writings in the ancient scroll seemed to be from Taoism, so he dressed like a Taoist and called himself Qingyun Zi. The later disciples addressed him as Qingyun Reverend. Qingyun Zi lived for 367 years and took in 10 disciples. Before he passed away he instructed, "What I have learned half of my life was fortune telling, my proficiency in geomancy. This Qingyun Mountain is a rare spiritual place in the mortal world. Our Qingyun sect occupying the mountain here, in the future will definitely prosperous. You all must not give up. Always remember, always remember." The 10 disciples at that moment all nodded, without any doubt. Qingyun Zi thus then passed away. Unexpectedly in the 100 years later, not knowing if heaven was making fun of them, or maybe Qingyun Zi's geomancy skills was not proficient, Qingyun sect did not prosperous and instead declined. In the 10 disciples, 2 passed away young, 4 died in Zhonghu enemy battles, leaving 1 disabled, 1 missing, passing down 2 branches. As such 50 years passed, earthquake occurred 100 miles around Qingyun Mountains, mountain torrents burst down, the earth and mountains shook, numerous casualties, and again killing off 1 branch. Leaving the sole survivor but limited by his aptitude, his ability was far from Qingyun Zi's fame. Instead that ancient scroll invited outsiders to fight for it. After a few blood battles, if it was not for the few powerful magical weapons left behind by Qingyun Zi, most likely Qingyun sect would have long been exterminated. And that state continued on for a total of 400 years. Qingyun sect had no improvement and almost could be described as on its last legs. Until the end, they were even bullied on their doorstep. Among the 7 summits, other than the main summit, Tongtian Peak, the rest were occupied by enemies. There were even ferocious bandits and robbers who used it as their stronghold, plundered everywhere, crimes were rife. Many had the misunderstanding that Qingyun sect had degenerated into that, although the disciples explained to them and had the intention to exterminate the enemies and correct their reputation, but they did not have the means to do so. Pitiful and lamentable. Now thinking of that, that was really Qingyun's most bitter period. Until 1,300 years ago from present, the conditions started to change. Most probably Qingyun Zi's geomancy predictions finally came true, or maybe the heavens were tired, did not want to make fun of Qingyun sect anymore. At that time, in Qingyun sect 11th generation, an exceptional talented, leader of the pack figure, Qingyi priest. Qingyi's secular family surname was Yi, was actually a poor scholar. His aptitude excelled others but repeatedly failed the examination selections. Later by a chance of luck, became the last disciple of Qingyun sect 10th generation sect head Wu Fangzi. He was 22 years old. After Qingyi joined the sect, in a short period of 1 year, comprehended all of Wu Fangzi's sword techniques, came out first among the disciples. And again another year, even Wu Fangzi could only barely to finish in a draw against him using his advanced cultivation. Wu Fangzi was both shocked and delighted, firmly decided to hand that ancient scroll which was passed down from the ancestors to Qingyi to comprehend himself. And hence, Qingyi at the illusory moon cave, studied in seclusion, and the seclusion lasted for 13 years. It was said that when he came out of seclusion, it was a full moon night. That night the cold moon hung high, the entire Qingyun mountain Tongtian peak was like daylight. Suddenly gusts of wind blew, whistling sounds like dragons singing were heard from the rear mountain, reverberated for 100 miles, not one did not change countenance. Later some said there was faint auspicious purple glow, charged up to the sky, a loud bang, the illusory moon cave suddenly opened wide, Qingyi's hair had turned all white, a smile on his face, clear glow on his body, he slowly strolled out, the crowd was shocked, thought he had become celestial. And after that, Qingyi officially renounced to be a priest, with his surname Yi, adopted Qingyun, Qing, and named himself, Qingyi. That day he smiled and parted with his mentor, Wu Fangzi, said, "Teacher please wait, disciple will go out to handle some matters, will return in a day." The others did not know the reason and after a day and night, Qingyi wielded his sword and returned, the enemies at the other 6 summits had been completely exterminated. Qingyi Taoist priest's skills were powerful and resolute, for a moment his fame shocked the world, Qingyun sect's reputation soared. And again another year, Wu Fangzi passed the sect head position to Qingyi and went to cultivate in seclusion, never to be involved in the sect matters. After Qingyi took over, he did all he could to build up the sect, stringently selected and picked his disciples, including what he had comprehended and learnt from that nameless ancient scroll, had unfathomable powers. Qingyun sect from there started to flourish, within 50 years, it was already the pillar of good faction, and until 200 years later, it was already the leader of the various good faction sects. Qingyi priest passed away at the age of 550 years old, his entire life he was very strict in his selection of disciples and only passed down to 7 people, assigned them with the 7 summits, and instructed the 7 branches to continue on the sect together. Among them the eldest branch was the main summit Tongtian Peak, was the core of the sect. And until the present, Qingyun sect had nearly 1,000 of disciples, their elites were as many as clouds, its reputation illustrious, classified together with Tianyan Temple, Fenxiang Valley, as the present 3 great sects. And sect head Reverend Daoshuan, his cultivation could already comprehend the enigma heaven and earth creations, transcended the worldly, and was even the #1 exceptional figure of the present. At the foot of Qingyun Hill, about northwest 50 miles from Heyang City, there was a small village named Grass Temple Village. It had about 40 over families, the people were simple and honest, most of them were woodcutters and traded with Qingyun sect for some silvers for a living. The villagers frequently saw Qingyun disciples flying here and there, looked amazing and extremely revered them, thought they had attained Tao and became celestial. And Qingyun sect had always looked around the surrounding commoners, and treated the villagers here quite well. This day, the sky was gloomy, the clouds hung low, giving one a suffocating feeling. Looking out from Grass Temple Village, that lofty Qingyun mountain piercing through the horizon, the strange summit and rocks, indistinctly carried some savages. Just that, the villagers had resided here for generations, seen such scenery countless of times, were not bothered, not to say innocent children. "Stinky fellow, where are you running to?" A loud curse, with some mocking, came from a child's mouth. He looked 12 or 13 years old, appearance dashing, led 4 or 5 boys and girls, pursuing another child in front. That child ahead of him was younger by 2 years, his stature also shorter, his face was smiling broadly, ran ahead with all his efforts, in between even turning his head around and made a funny face. "Zhang Xiaofan, stop if you have guts!" That child behind shouted. The child who was called Zhang Xiaofan with a pei sound, shouted while running, "You think I'm an idiot?" After speaking, ran even faster. Pursuing, these children gradually ran into the dilapidated grass temple at the east of the village. Looking from the outside, this small grass temple was extremely broken down, nobody knew how many generations it had experienced. Zhang Xiaofan was the first to dash in, unexpectedly he did not notice and was tripped by the door, hutong, a sound, fell. The few children behind were delighted, swarmed up and pressed him down, that dashing boy looking conceited, laughed and said, "You are now caught by me, this time you have nothing to say right." Who knew? Zhang Xiaofan rolled his eyes, said, "Not counted, not counted, you sneak attacked me, how can it be counted?" That boy was stunned, asked, "When did I sneak attack you?" Zhang Xiaofan said, "Good are you Lin Jingyu, you dare to say this door plank was not placed here by you?" The boy who was called Lin Jingyu shouted, "There is no such thing." Zhang Xiaofan pursed his lips, tilted his head, a determined not to submit, unyielding look. Lin Jingyu's anger rose, grabbed his throat, angrily said, "We agreed if you are caught you will admit defeat, do you concede?" Zhang Xiaofan ignored him. Lin Jingyu's face turned red, putting more strength in his hands, loudly said, concede or not. Zhang Xiaofan's windpipe was choked by him, his breathing gradually became difficult, slowly his face also turned red, but he at his young age, his character was actually extremely stubborn, refused to speak. Lin Jingyu became even more incensed, his strength increased, repeated said, concede or not. Concede or not, concede or not. By then, the other children noticed something amiss, quietly retreated, leaving these two innocent children, because of their personal feelings, each being stubborn, continued on. Looking as a major accident was about to happen for no reason, suddenly a Buddhism chant was heard from the intersection of the temple. Someone said, Amitabha, quickly stop. A withered hand, struck out, stretching two fingers, flicked on Lin Jingyu's both hands. Lin Jingyu, like being hit by lightning, entire body shook, his hands naturally let go. Zhang Xiaofan gulped in air, evidently was severely choked. Both of them, stunned at their spots, came back to their senses, recalled what had happened, looked at each other, each turning more and more afraid. Lin Jingyu spoke in daze, Xiaofan, sorry. I also don't know why. Zhang Xiaofan shook his head, his breathing gradually calmed down, said, it's all right. Who are you? The children looked at his direction. In this temple, an elderly monk stood there. His face was full of wrinkles, wearing torn old kasaya, his entire body looking dirty. But his hand was holding onto a string of jade beads, glittering and translucent, dazzling to the eyes, emitting faint green light. The strange thing was, among this several similar-sized, bright and clear green jade beads, there was a not jade not stone, deep purple, dark round bead. Chapter 2 Puzzle. That old monk did not reply, only watched the two children intently and couldn't help but glance at Lin Jingyu a few more times, thought to himself, good aptitude, but why is his temperament so extreme? At this moment Zhang Xiaofan stepped up and said, hey, who are you, why didn't we see you before? The grass temple village was located near to Qingyun sect. Taoism was respected here, Buddhism disciples were rarely seen, and hence Zhang Xiaofan's question. The old monk glanced at him, a smile revealed on his lips. He instead asked, little patron, just now your life was of great concern, you only need to admit defeat, why did you have to hold on? If it's not for old monk me, most probably you would have lost your life for nothing. Zhang Xiaofan was stunned, felt that the old monk's words were not wrong, but things happened so fast and he was still unable to say out the reason, only stood stunned. Lin Jingyu stared at that old monk, pulled Zhang Xiaofan's hand and said, Xiaofan, this old monk is weird, let's not bother about him. He pulled him and headed out. The other few kids also followed, clearly following his lead. Zhang Xiaofan subconsciously also walked, but after he walked out a few meters from the temple, he couldn't help but glance back. The sky was darkening and he could still see that old monk standing there, but his face was already indistinct. Deep in the night, a sound of thunder, strong wind scattering the last clouds, the dark clouds churned at the horizon. The storm was approaching, a blanket of harshness. The old monk was still in the grass temple, meditating on the floor. Lifting his eyes, Qingyun Hill in the distance was hazy, there was no human sounds in the wild countryside around it, only swift wind and loud thunder. What a big storm it was! A flash of lightning pierced through the sky, this solitary small grass temple illuminated for a moment. That old monk was already standing at the entrance, his face solemn, looked up at the sky, his brows tightening. In the village located in the west, a wave of black energy appeared, thick like ink, churning incessantly. The old monk stood in the temple, staring intently at this black energy. Suddenly, that black energy rolled, spiraled upwards, directly heading outside of the village, towards the direction of the grass temple. Its speed was extremely fast, in a blink it arrived. The old monk's sharp eyes, with one look he could see that a child was trapped in it, it was Lin Jingyu. The old monk's face turned serious, without hesitation, and he did not seem to be making any stance. His withered body abruptly leapt up, directly into the dark energy. Deep within the darkness, a surprised voice said, A few muffled sounds, the dark energy suddenly stopped, unable to spiral up the temple. The old monk grabbed Lin Jingyu, slowly descended, a part of his robes at the back was tore. Using the faint light, Lin Jingyu's eyes were tightly closed, his breathing calm, not knowing if he was sleeping or had fainted. The old monk did not put him down, looked up at that mass of black energy, said, Mr. is highly skilled, why attack an innocent child and lose your status? A hoarse voice was heard from the dark energy, said, and who are you, dare to meddle in my affairs? The old monk did not reply, said, "We are below Qingyun Hill. If Qingyun sect knows Mr. is creating trouble here, I'm afraid Mr. will not have it easy in the future." That person pay a sound, his voice disdained, said, "What is Qingyun sect? They are only depending on their numbers. Old Buddhist monk, stop your talks, quickly hand that child over to me if you are smart." The old monk clasped his palms together, said, "Amitabha, monks have mercy at heart, old monk me cannot stand by and watch as this child is harmed by you." That person angrily said, "Good bald thief, you are looking for death." After speaking, in the dark energy which was spinning, a dark red ray flashed within it. In that instant around the temple, yin wind blew strongly, ghostly aura increased. Poisonous blood flag. Anger appeared on the old monk's face. "Evildoer, you dare to practice such heartless and evil thing, today definitely will not let you go." That hoarse voice sneered, did not reply. A whistle was heard, red light exploded, from the midair, a strong stench and a two-jong red flag slowly rose. At this time, ghost wailings became more mournful, as if numerous grieving souls were crying. Sounds of bones were also heard, extremely terrifying. "Bald thief, receive death." That person shouted. From the red flag, a hideous ghost face appeared suddenly, 3 angles and 4 eyes, sharp teeth and fangs, ka, bones cracking sounds everywhere. The 4 eyes on the ghost face suddenly opened together, a sound, solidified and charged out from the flag, carrying the smell of blood, attacking the old monk. The monk looked even more infuriated, knew that the more powerful this poisonous blood flag was, the more innocent people were implicated during cultivation. To cultivate to that level of power, most probably it would need the blood essences of more than 300 people. That evil person was really utterly devoid of conscience. Looking as that ghostly object was about to charge at him, the old monk did not put down the child, using only the meditation jade beads in his left hand to draw a circle in the air before him. He single-handedly formed a Buddhism lion seal, 5 fingers bent up, golden light indistinctly glowing at the fingertips. The next moment a golden wheel appeared before him, dazzling with golden light, resisting that ghostly object. "Small tricks, also dare to show." Before the old monk could finish his sentence, suddenly his body shook. He felt a bite on his right hand which was carrying Lin Jingyu. A feeling of numbness immediately traveled half his body, darkness before his eyes. The golden wheel before him wavered and looked as if it was collapsing. And at this moment, that ghostly object had another strange change. On the forehead above its 4 eyes, ka, 2 sounds, a red huge eye opened, gust of blood stench blew, the power increased, a sound of ghost wailing was heard, a flash of red light. That ghostly object hit the golden wheel into pieces, hitting heavily onto the old monk's chest. The old monk was hit flying backwards. A few muffled sounds were heard along the way, most likely his ribs were all broken. Lin Jingyu also fell onto the ground. The next moment, his withered and thin body crashed onto the temple wall. A sound, dust flew, the entire wall collapsed. Ha, the man in the darkness laughed wildly, extremely arrogant. The old monk stood up stumbling, a burning feeling in his throat. He couldn't help but threw up hot blood, dyeing his robes red. He felt giddy, his entire body in pain. The tingling numbness feeling soon came near his heart. He forced himself to calm down. His gaze swept to Lin Jingyu, who was still unconscious on the ground, noticed within his clothes, a colorful centipede slowly crawled out. The strangest thing was, its tail was split into 7, as if it had 7 tails. And each tail had a different color, the colors bright and beautiful. It was a terrifying beautiful sight. 7-tailed centipede. The old monk's words sounded like a moan. The dark energy on his face turned deeper, blood continued to flow out of his mouth. It was as if it was hard to hold on, but he was still forcing himself to. He looked at that mass of dark energy in the air, said, "You put the world's rare venomous animal onto this child, and deliberately hide your power, waiting for a chance to attack me. You are here specially for me, right?" The man with a hee sneer, said, "That's right, I came especially for you, Kuji bald donkey. If I did not do so, with your Tianyan temple skills, you would not be easy to deal with. Alright, better quickly hand over, sinister orb, over, I will give you the antidote to the poison and spare your life." Kuji with a miserable laugh, said, "To think that my name still has a intelligent character, didn't expect that you have trained in this poisonous blood flag evil object. How would you not lust after sinister orb?" His face turned solemn, firmly said, "Want me to hand over the most sinister object in this world to you? Dream on." The man was enraged. "Then you can go and meet your Buddhism ancestors." Red light flashed, the poisonous blood flag fluttered in the wind, ghost wailing started, the huge object spun and again attacked Kuji. Kuji shouted out, His robes swell without wind, his thin body seemed to expand greatly. His left hand used strength and a crisp sound was heard. The meditation beads were broken, several beads did not fall down and instead kept spinning, each emitting dark green light, floating before Puji, only that dark purple bead dropped down. Puji flipped his hand, caught the dark purple bead, both hands forming a bottle seal, both of his eyes big and staring, golden light glowed from his entire body, word by word he chanted, and ma ni ba mi hong. The 6 words great bright incantation. The man in the darkness tone immediately became more serious. Following the old monk incantation, all of the jade beads burst out in brilliance. At the same time, the ghostly object had already arrived, the blood stench assaulted over. However, once it touched the beads, radiance, it immediately froze where it was. Even though it was so, Puji's body still wavered. The 7-tailed centipede was the world's most poisonous animal. With his several hundred years of cultivation, it was still hard to resist. But on his darkening face, a faint smile appeared, looking awe-inspiring. Die! Puji with a loud shout, like a lion roar, the shout shook the 4 corners. The beads before him seemed to be stimulated by Buddhism energy, their radiance increased. Suddenly a bead broke, forming a Buddhism word in the air, swiftly charged ahead and hit onto the ghostly thing face. Wah! Ah! That object made a miserable cry, immediately retreated a few steps, the red light around it receded greatly, clearly injured. The man angrily said, "Good you this bald donkey." He was about to make a move but it was too late. Just at that moment, 7 or 8 beads turned into Buddhism characters and hit the ghostly object. That object howled incessantly, kept retreating, making a cowed appearance. At the 9th bead attack, it finally let out a long howl, its 5 eyes cracked completely, sounds of bone cracking filling the air, with a loud rumble fell onto the ground, struggled a few times and finally stiffened, transforming into blood, extremely pungent. At the same time, Puji Hua, a sound, threw up another mouthful of blood, and the blood color was already black. Ah! A sharp cry, at this critical moment, was heard from the temple door. Both of them had a shock, looked towards the door and saw the child, Zhang Xiaofan, not knowing why he had came to the temple and was standing at the entrance, staring dumbfoundedly at this scene. A sneer was heard from the dark energy. Without any action from him, the 7-tailed centipede on Lin Jingyu suddenly swished its tails and flew up, as swift as lightning, towards Zhang Xiaofan. Puji frowned, right finger pointed, a jade bead swiftly flew out. That centipede seemed to have spiritual intelligence, knew the power of the bead and so dared not receive it, shook its tails and like having wings, dived into the dark energy and disappeared. The man eerily said, "He, indeed one of the 4 great holy monks of Tianyan Temple, even seriously injured, still able to break free from my poisonous bloody corpse king, but you have received a blow from the bloody corpse and also from the 7-tailed centipede, how long more can you hold on? Better be obedient and give me the sinister orb." Puji's eyes were even starting to bleed dark blood. With a bitter laugh, he hoarsely said, "If old monk me today have to die here, I will first get rid of you this evil person." Once he finished speaking, all of the beads before him lit up, the person in the midair immediately became alert, suddenly a whistle, an object glimmering with dark green light hit the dark energy from the back. It was that bead which was directed to attack the centipede. After flying for a distance in the air, it was controlled secretly by Puji, launching an attack secretly from the rear. The person in the air made an angry roar, clearly was caught unprepared. Pong pong pong, a few disorderly loud sounds. Where the light flashed, the dark energy was in disarray and finally scattered and vanished. A tall thin man slowly descended, his entire body covered tightly with black robes, unable to see his face or age, only a pair of eyes, flashing fiercely. Behind him, a long sword was tied to his back. Puji quietly said, "Mr. has such a level of skills, why do you not dare to let others see you?" The person harshly spoke, "Bald donkey, today I will let you die without burial here." After speaking, a sound he pulled out his long sword. The sword was as clear as autumn water, bright but not glaring, with a faint clear glow on it. "Good sword," Puji couldn't help but exclaim. That man with a low sneer, his hand forming a sword gesture, stepping on 7 stars and walked 7 steps in succession, his long sword suddenly stabbed the sky, chanting these words. 9 heavens profound shrines, transform into divine thunder. Brilliant heaven might, with sword as the lead. Dark clouds in the horizon immediately started to turn turbulent, thunder rumbled, lightning flashed incessantly at the boundaries, a stern atmosphere immediately covered the earth, wild winds started. Divine sword wield thunder true formula. Puji's face turned ashen, and then shock, despair and an inexplicable fervor. You are actually from Qingyun sect. And ma ni ba mi hong. Words which Puji chanted, was the famous, 6 words great bright incantation, also known as Goddess of Mercy Inspiration True Words. Recorded in Buddhism scriptures. The incantation encompassed the creations of heaven and earth. Understanding it would be able to escape the dust, cleanse your heart and reach the land of ultimate bliss in great joy. It was one of the most well-known Buddhism classic incantations. Chapter 3 Grand Aspiration. To Zhang Xiaofan, the clouds in the sky, no matter whether white or gray, were never as close to the earth as the dark clouds today. The thunders were never such deafening, lightnings never that dazzling, he almost could not open his eyes. As if the sky was about to collapse. He stood dumbly there, watching the black-robed person and the old monk staring at each other in fury, fighting each other. Suddenly, a thunder exploded beside, his ears rang with the loud sound. He saw a bright flash of lightning in the sky, struck down, onto that black-robed person's sword. Instantly the person's robe puffed up, both of his eyes staring widely, as if about to explode. At this moment, in this grass temple, under the illumination of the lightning, it was like daytime. The lightning at the sword tip showed off its splendor in the dark night. It was so beautiful, even Zhang Xiaofan held his breath, and in Puji's eyes, a strange fervor appeared again. This is Taoism true way great ability and power. The black-robed person was only heard giving a loud shout, his left hand making a sword stance, using all of his strength to shake his wrist. Thunder rumbled, the lightning at the sword tip swiftly struck towards Puji. Along its journey, the vegetation and broken stones flew up from the force of it passing through the ground below. A deep burn mark was seen. Puji retreated 3 steps, removed his hand seal, clasped his palms together, his face solemn, his entire body radiating golden light, quietly chanted, Buddha is merciful. Pa! A sound, the remaining 7 jade beads broke and crumbled, formed a huge Buddha word 3 kai before him, dazzling with golden light, unable to view it directly. This moment, the lightning and that Buddha word collided. Zhang Xiaofan suddenly felt his heart jumped violently, as if his entire blood channels in that instant flowed backwards. His hands and legs felt weak, unable to breathe. In that instant the wind stopped, the thunder ceased, the entire world stopped. Then, he involuntarily flew backwards. Before he could even start to feel afraid, he only saw white light and golden rays, incomparably magnificent, surpassing the sun in the sky. The entire grass temple, cracked, with the 2 men fighting as the storm center, exploded outwards including upwards. His heart was empty, he only felt sharp whistling of the wind, incessantly blowing past his ears. He felt afraid, subconsciously wanted to curl his body but he had no strength, he could only drift to the unknown place. In his mind, a thought surfaced, am I dying? Strong fear suddenly overwhelmed him, he shivered with cold sweat. When death was standing before you, how should you face it? He fainted, unconscious. Puji slowly walked over, his footsteps hobbling, carrying both Zhang Xiaofan and Lin Jingyu under his arms. He came to a slightly cleared area and placed both of them down. Immediately he felt his entire body in pain, almost about to break apart, unable to sustain any longer, he collapsed sitting. He looked at his chest, saw through the burnt monk robe, he could still see, a black energy had already encircled his chest, only a tiny spot near his heart was untouched. He laughed bitterly, his hand searching for something in his bosom. His hand was trembling violently. After a while, he slowly felt a red medicine pill, about the size of a finger, plain and ordinary. Puji sighed and softly said, didn't expect that the ghostly doctor was right, should I or should I not take his 3 days must die pill? He hesitated, finally with a nod, swallowed it. Then, he looked up, into the distant hill. The sky finally rained. Qingyun Mountain stood lofty in the storm, obscured and mysterious. Taoism skills are really amazing, it can actually use the divine power. If it can be corroborate with our Buddhism sect, learn from each other's strong points, we will definitely able to comprehend and solve the mystery of immortality. A pity that Reverend Daoshuan's cultivation though far surpassed me but eventually is the same as my other 3 senior brothers, unable to put down the sect indifferences, unable to put down his status. Sigh. Puji heaved a long sigh, looked away, glanced at the 2 boys. The storm had worsened, drenching their heads. The temple was already devastated during the battle, and there wasn't any place nearby that could shelter them. His heart suddenly tightened, couldn't help but be worried for the 2 boys. He was forced to exert his powers just now, with Tianyan Temple, Great Brahman Wisdom True Way, and using the sect's treasure, jade beads, power, created the power to banish the evil and block that evil person's powerful celestial sword-wield thunder true formula, and also injured him heavily, causing him to flee. But as he himself was severely wounded, and also received a blow too, he was already at his end, even the last ray of hope was also gone. Right now he was only using the special pill to extend his life for 3 days only. That evil man although heavily injured but his core was unhurt. After I am gone, he would surely come back to kill the witnesses. By that time, not only these 2 children, I'm afraid the entire village would be in danger. What should I do? Puji's heart was in a mess. He had cultivated to an extremely high level, but firstly he knew he was dying and his mind was not in control. Secondly he worried for the innocent commoners' lives, and unfortunately that evildoer was someone of status in Qingyun sect. If he sought help from the sect out of a sudden, most likely it might make matters worse. But the most regretful thing in his heart, was his greatest wish unfulfilled. He is Tianyan Temple 4 great holy monks, respected and admired by the world, extremely revered. However, to him, even more important was to comprehend the mystery of life and death, unravel the knot of immortality. He had long at 50 years ago, realized that even how hard he tried to practice and cultivate Buddhism ways, he could only strengthen his powers and cultivation, and not solve the mystery of life and death. He pondered hard and long. After decades, he thought of a way that was never heard before. In the current world, Buddhism, Taoism and the evil sect were the most prosperous, skills attainments were the highest and deepest. The evil sect's reputation was abominated, the evil skills cruel and immoral, too evil to be referenced, and Taoism's skills, profound and ingenious, with Buddhist sect each had its strength in different areas. If they could come together and study, that would definitely break the stalemate. But he would never imagined, his 3 senior brothers who have always been broad-minded, would object unanimously, thought it was heresy and unimaginable, instead tried to persuade him not to. He was unwilling, tried to visit the various Taoist sects. It was already several times with just Qingyun, but there was not a single time he was not rejected by Reverend Daoshuan. Thinking of it, he made a bitter laugh, with some self-mockery, thought to himself, he only had 3 days to live, why was he still thinking of immortality, wasn't it just needless worries? But although he had let it go, but when he looked at the 2 children, he really could not put down his worries. For a moment he could not think of any good solution, glanced around, saw that there was a pine tree in the distance and could provide some shelter from the storm, and so carried the 2 children and struggled to reach there. He managed to walk to the tree, carefully placed them down. Puji was already exhausted, fell sitting onto the ground, leaning against the tree, panting unceasingly. Heaven and earth heartless, treats all living things as straw dogs. These Taoist words, conveyed some harshness and anger, from Puji's mouth, slowly chanted. The sky was as dark as ink, covered the heavens and earth. The infinite gloomy clouds loomed above, rain fell from the sky, thin and dense, the cold wind blew, drops fell onto his face, chilling the heart. He looked up at the sky, after a long time, looked away, glanced at the 2 children before him, quietly said, 2 little patrons, old monk wants to save you but unfortunately I am helpless. The events are because of me and instead implicated both of you, it is really a sin. Sigh, if both of you are Qingyun disciples, at that Qingyun hill, among the people, most likely would be safer, now instead. Suddenly, Puji's body shook, his mouth mumbled, Qingyun disciple, his mind thought quickly, as if thought of something but in a blink about to lose it. In that moment, he was already sweating cold sweats. Then, his eyes, for some reason, had that inexplicable fervor again. He raised his face up to the sky and laughed loudly, his laughter had a trace of madness. Excellent, excellent, although my life is short, but if I could pass on Buddhism amazing skills to one of them and instruct him to join Qingyun sect, practice Taoism skills, isn't it killing 2 birds with 1 stone? This could save their lives and also help me to fulfill my wish. Buddhism and Taoism have always been estranged since ancient times, never have contact with each other. Qingyun sect will never imagined, a young man, also living at Qingyun Hill Foot since young, would have Buddhism skills. As long as someone has both knowledge, he will definitely solve the 10,000 years old mystery of life and death. If it is so, what regret will I have when I died? His mind was made up, his entire self was extremely excited, both his cheeks red, his eyes bloodshot. Subconsciously he glanced at Lin Jingyu, his hand stretched out. However, halfway he stopped, his mind thought, This was an important matter, now that each sectarian bias was extremely important, especially secretly learning from other sects. If this was found out, the plan would fail and the person would be killed. Lin Jingyu, this child had excellent aptitude, if he was accepted by Qingyun sect, would definitely receive his teacher's attention. At his young age, most likely he would not be able to hide this great secret. Thinking of this, he turned and looked at Zhang Xiaofan, thought about his stubborn character, nodded and said, although his aptitude is rather poor but it is all right, in the future you will have to depend on your own luck. After speaking, without hesitation, he patted a few times on Zhang Xiaofan's body, using his remaining power, woke him up. Zhang Xiaofan slowly came awake, his eyes blurred, his ears ringing. After a while, he recovered fully and looked clearly, immediately was startled, his mouth opened in shock. That old monk was covered with wounds, sat before him, left side of his body seemed to be burned, extremely withered and ugly, the dark energy heavy on his face, a look of death. However, for some reason, the monk was energetic, smiling broadly. Other than that, he also saw Lin Jingyu lying beside, unconscious. You what are you doing? Zhang Xiaofan was stunned, stammered and asked. Puji did not answer, carefully watched him and asked, Little patron, this storm is so heavy, you as a little child, why did you come to this secluded place? Zhang Xiaofan was stunned, said, I saw you still standing in the temple during evening, and later saw it was about to rain. This place is very dilapidated, I think it would be very cold and so came to give you some food to eat. Puji's lips moved, his palms clasped together, Shanzai, Shanzai. All living things are predestined, their lives are already decided, Buddha is merciful. Zhang Xiaofan asked puzzledly, what did you say? Puji smiled and said, what I mean was, little patron and I are fated. Since it is so, I have a set of cultivation skills, little patron, are you willing to learn? Zhang Xiaofan asked, what thing is this cultivation skill? Puji was stunned for a moment and then laughed loudly, stretched out his withered hand, patted his head and said, it is not a thing, it is just to teach you some breathing techniques. After you learned it, you have to promise me a few things, all right? Zhang Xiaofan, not knowing if he comprehend, still said, you can tell me. Puji said, you must not tell anyone about this, not even to your family, can you do it? Zhang Xiaofan nodded and said, all right, I know, I will not say even in death. Puji's heart was shocked, at his young age, his face was steadfast, the rain fell like knives and frost, drenching his little face, looking haggard. Puji suddenly inhaled deeply, closed his eyes but he was still speaking, other than that, you must practice this technique every day but not before anyone, you can only practice it during the late night. Lastly, unless at the critical moment, you must not display this technique, if not there would be great trouble. Speaking till here, he again opened his eyes, stared at Zhang Xiaofan, said, can you do it? Zhang Xiaofan hesitated, tilted his head, scratched his head too, his face bewildered but eventually still solemnly nodded. Puji smiled, did not speak more and started to teach him the words formula. The words were not that long, about 1,000 words but it was dry and profound. Zhang Xiaofan diligently memorized and used a total of 6 hours before he could remember it all. Puji waited until he was done before heaving a sigh of relief, his expression looking very exhausted. He looked at Zhang Xiaofan, his eyes containing affection, said, I have cultivated a lifetime and have never thought of taking a disciple, didn't expect that before I die, I would have a teacher and disciple destiny with you. Speaking of which, you should also know my name. He paused and said, I am known as Puji, a Tianyan temple monk. Child, do you know Tianyan temple? Zhang Xiaofan paused, shook his head. Puji let out a laugh, said, really as a child. Then recalled something, searched out a deep purple bead from his bosom, looked at it carefully and passed to Zhang Xiaofan, said, keep this bead well, do not let others see it. When you are settled down in the days later, find a deep valley cliff, throw it down, and that's that. And, the name that I have just told you, you also must never tell anyone. Zhang Xiaofan took the bead, said, yes. Puji patted his head, said, you and I have this destiny, not knowing if we can still meet in the next life. Child, kneel and kowtow to me 3 times, call me teacher. Zhang Xiaofan looked at Puji, saw that he was now looking solemn, and also nodded and acknowledged him as teacher, knelt and kowtow heavily 3 times. He had just finished and before he could look up, Puji was heard laughing softly, but his laughter contained grief. Zhang Xiaofan was about to look up at him but suddenly felt someone hit his back. Immediately his vision blackened and he was again unconscious. Chapter 4 Shocking Change. Dawn. The rain had finally stopped. The crystal clear sparkling water beads on the trees, dripped silently from the leaves, due to the wind, made beautiful arcs in the air, landing onto Zhang Xiaofan's face. The cold sensation woke Zhang Xiaofan up from his slumber. He opened his eyes, subconsciously called out, "Teacher," but there was nobody, only Lin Jingyu beside him, sleeping soundly. As if it was all a dream. But the dilapidated temple in the distance, his sleeping companion, all told him, that was all real. He thought dazedly for a moment, shook his head, walked to Lin Jingyu and pushed him hard. Lin Jingyu muttered a few words and slowly woke up, rubbed his eyes and before he could speak, felt a gust of chill and couldn't help but shiver. He opened his eyes, saw Zhang Xiaofan and him were all drenched, lying under a pine tree in the wilderness, stared dumbfoundedly and said, "Wasn't I sleeping at home, why am I here?" Zhang Xiaofan shrugged and said, "I don't know too, but I am very cold, let's quickly go back." Lin Jingyu still had questions but he was really very cold, nodded and stood up and ran back with Zhang Xiaofan to the village. Before they reached the village, both of them had already realized something was wrong. Usually at this time, the villagers would be long up and about but today it was very quiet, not even a single person was seen, and when the morning breeze blew over, there was a faint smell of blood. They looked at each other, saw the uneasiness in each other's eyes, at the same time quickened their steps and ran towards the village. Soon they came to the entrance. Looking in from the main road, they saw in the center of the village, the 40+ families of the Grass Temple village, more than 200 people, old and young, men and women, all lying on the empty ground, their bodies stiff, already turned into corpses, blood flowed like rivers, flies flying around, the blood stench, assaulted them. Lin Jingyu and Zhang Xiaofan were extremely shocked at the scene, shouted and then fainted. Not knowing how much time had passed, Zhang Xiaofan abruptly came awake, sat up immediately, panting heavily, both of his hands trembling. When he was unconscious, his mind was full of ferocious savage ghost faces, dripping blood and white bones, nightmares consecutively. He calmed himself down, looked around, saw an ordinary room with 2 small windows. The room's furnishings were simple and clean. There were a few pine wood tables and chairs, water flask and cups on top of it. Occupying half of the room were brick beds placed side by side. There were 4 beds. Other than the one he was lying on, the bedding beside him looked ruffled, seemed like someone had slept on it just. As for the other 2 beds, the beddings were folded neatly and tidily. On the wall above the 4 beds, a painting hung, in it a large character. Dao. Looking at it, it seemed like an ordinary room in an inn or a dormitory for a few disciples learning from a master. Zhang Xiaofan sat for a while, a thought suddenly surfaced in his head. Maybe last night was only a nightmare. Maybe I had been sleeping here all along. Maybe if I walked out this room, Mother would as usual, chided him while smiling, "You this little lazy worm." He slowly got down the bed, wore his shoes, walked towards the door. The door was left unlocked. From the door gap, slight breeze blew in, chilly. He walked slowly, both hands slowly clenching tightly. His heart pounding fast, he held his breath. Soon, he came to the door, both hands on it. That instant, the door was as heavy as mountain, dense like metal. He gritted his teeth, made up his mind. Jia, a sound, pulled open the door. The bright light outside flooded in, forcing his eyes to squint. The warm sunlight shone onto him, a faint warmth. Just that, his heart dropped into ice. There was a small yard, a few pine trees and grasses, also few flowers within it, bloomed. A corridor ahead led to outside the yard. 4 kai outside the door, there was a short flight of stairs, connecting the yard and the corridor. At the corner of the stairs, a child sat alone, his hands on his cheeks, sitting dazedly, unmoving. Perhaps the sound of the door opening disturbed him. That child hesitated and slowly turned around. Lin Jingyu. Zhang Xiaofan opened his mouth, thousands of questions in his heart but the words became silent when they reached his mouth. He very much wanted to shout out, but his heart felt heavy, unable to shout out. 2 rows of tears, just like that, silently, rolled. The 2 children, just like that, without words, looked at each other. Somewhere in the distant, clear cries of birds were heard. The sky was blue with clouds. Zhang Xiaofan sat at the other end of the stairs, looking down, watched the small stone path in the little yard. The little yard, a blanket of silence. Just like that, not knowing how long had passed, Lin Jingyu slowly spoke, I woke up slightly earlier than you. At that time there were still a few people in the house. I asked them, this is Qingyun Hill Tongtian Peak. Zhang Xiaofan quietly said, Qingyun Hill. Lin Jingyu said, they said there were a few Qingyun sect disciples who were passing by, saw in the village, his voice became choked. He rubbed his eyes strongly, inhaled deeply, and continued, then they found us both at the village rear and brought us up. Zhang Xiaofan's lips moved but he did not look up. What are we going to do now, Jingyu? Lin Jingyu shook his head, forlornly said, I don't know. Zhang Xiaofan was about to speak again when he heard an unfamiliar voice behind him, ah, both of you are awake. Both of them turned around, saw a young priest standing there, dressed in blue robes, looked rather dashing. He approached with quick steps, said, just nice that the few teachers also wanted to meet you both to ask a few questions. Both of you follow me. Zhang Xiaofan and Lin Jingyu looked at each other, stood up. Lin Jingyu said, yes, this big brother please lead us there. That young priest glanced at Lin Jingyu, nodded and said, follow me. They walked out of the yard. Before them was an even longer and bigger circular corridor. Every 2 zhang of its boundary, there was a red pillar. And between every 2 pillars, there was a arched door. They followed the circular corridor, past the arched doors and pillars and then realized, in every arched door, there was a similar small yard behind it. Seemed like this was where the disciples resided. Not mentioning others, just from this scale, this small yard contained most likely not less than 100 rooms, reflecting the number of Qingyun disciples. After a while, they reached the end of the corridor, a lofty white wall reaching high up into the clouds. Below it a big door was opened, 2 thick wooden panels, height of several zhang. One needed to raise their heads to view, not knowing where they had managed to find such huge wood materials in the first place. The young priest was long used to the scene, his expression did not have the shocks on. The 2 youths expressionlessly walked out the door. Zhang Xiaofan and Lin Jingyu hurriedly followed. Once they stepped out, the 2 children again held their breaths, couldn't believe the sight before them. There was almost like the legendary paradise. A huge vast ground, covered totally in white marble, sparkling in the sunlight, at one glance, made one felt insignificant. In the distance, white fluffy clouds like fine gauze, drifted below their feet. In the center of the public square, a huge copper cauldron was placed every 10 zhang, arranged in 3 rows, each row had 3, a total of 9, placed orderly. Faint smoke drifted up from the cauldrons, the clear scent lingering. Over here, as if he understood the children's thoughts, the young priest revealed a smile on his face, after letting them look for a while, reminded them and continued ahead. This is one of Qingyun's 6 sceneries, sea of clouds, there is something even better ahead. The young priest chatted while walking. Lin Jingyu couldn't help but asked, what is it? The young priest pointed, said, Rainbow Bridge. Both of them gazed ahead, saw ahead in the distance, at the end of the square, behind the hazy cloud mist, there seemed to be something shining. They quickened their steps up. Gradually, there was the sound of water, occasionally 1 or 2 thunder-like strange roars, not knowing where it came from. As they approached, the cloud mist like a gentle celestial lady, lightly wrapped around them and slowly pulled open the indistinct veil, revealing a clear sight. At the end of the square, a flight of stone steps, without any base or stand, floated in the air. One end at the square, stretched up slanted, deep into the white clouds, like the flood dragon leaping into the air, proud and aloof. Trickling sounds of water was heard. Under the sunlight, the entire bridge radiated 7 colors, like the rainbow in the horizon, descended into the mortal world, gorgeous and magnificent, its beauty beyond comparison. Both of them stared nonplussed. The young priest laughed and said, follow me please, and then walked up the stone bridge. Once they stepped onto the bridge, both of them then realized, water was constantly flowing down at both sides of the bridge, extremely clear but none of it touched the middle of the bridge. The sunlight penetrated through the clouds and shone onto the bridge, refracted by the flowing water, forming a magnificent rainbow. The priest glanced at their mesmerized faces, said, be careful, the bottom of the bridge is a bottomless abyss. If you fall in accidentally, then it would be a place where your body would not even be buried. Both of them were shocked, quickly focused themselves and carefully walked. The bridge was rather high and long. The 3 of them walked on it, felt the sea of clouds was gradually left at their feet, guessed they were getting higher. And that strange noise continued incessantly. The 3 of them walked for a while, the clouds gradually thinned and they had walked out of the clouds, their visions brightened, a clear sight, the blue skies so clear as if transparent. Around them were all skies, so vast that there was no boundaries. Below them was the vast sea of clouds, floating gently. Looking over, their hearts immediately broadened. And ahead was Tongtian Peak Qingyun Master's building, Crystal Jade Hall. The green hills contained jade. The temple building was magnificent. Crystal Jade Hall sat at the summit's peak. Clouds surrounded it. At times white cranes flew past, circling around, like a celestial paradise, invoking an awe-inspiring feeling. By then the bridge was no longer ascending, forming an arched shape in the air. The other end was erected beside a green jade lake located in front of the building. At the same time, Taoism chantings were heard indistinctly from the building. Also that strange noise was getting louder. The three of them walked down the bridge, came to the lake. A wide stone steps linked it to the Crystal Jade Hall's grand door. The lake water was jade green, still like mirror. Humans and the mountain's images all could be clearly seen. As they walked up the stairs and was about to head to the entrance, suddenly a roar was heard from deep within the lake, the sound like thunder. It was that strange noise they heard before. Looking at it, the center of the lake had a huge vortex suddenly. The next moment, huge waves rolled up, a large body leapt out, spraying drops of water over. But the young priest seemed prepared, his left hand stretching out, his body leapt up into the air, swiftly drifted back 2 jong away in midair. The two children as expected couldn't escape in time and was drenched wet. Both of them had not realized that, only stared dumbfoundedly at the huge beast which appeared before them, as tall as 5 jong, dragon head lion body, scales covered its entire body, huge eyes and wide mouth, 2 sharp fangs sparkled in the sunlight, its appearance hideous, a fearful sight. That huge beast shook its body, hula, another spray of water rained down, and then as if discovering something, its huge head stretched over to the stairs. The two children looked at that beast which was very much larger than them, under the sunlight, sharp fangs clearly visible, watching as it was approaching, their hearts terrified and couldn't help but lean tightly against each other, their hearts pounding. At this moment, the priest was back, his palm held in front of his chest, respectfully said, "Honorable Spirit, they are especially summoned by the various teachers." The strange beast stared at him, a sound, snorted, a pair of eyeballs actually turned, like a human contemplating thoughts. And then no longer paying attention to them, slithered to the side, lay on the dry grounds beside the lake, yawned and lazily placed its head down, basking in the sun and slept. The priest signaled the two shocked children to continue walking, said, "Honorable Spirit is an ancient spiritual beast subdued by our sect founder, Qingyi, 1,000 years ago, known as Water Kylan. That time Qingyi founder glorified Qingyun, subdued the demons and eliminated the devil. It also assisted greatly. Now it is our Qingyun sect mountain spiritual guardian, respectfully known as Honorable Spirit." After speaking, he again bowed to the direction of the Water Kylan. Zhang Xiaofan was still in a daze. Lin Jingyu pulled him and signaled him with his eyes, and he also respectfully bowed to the Water Kylan. However, the Water Kylan did not turn around, motionless and snorting loudly. Most likely it did not notice. After both of them finished, they continued on. Walked past the tall stairs. From far they could see the golden inscribed board, Crystal Jade Hall, 3 words inscribed on it. When they reached the building, the doors were wide opened, the interior brightly lit. The 3 Pure One's deities were worshipped, the Jade Pure One, Lord of Lingbao and Grand Pure One, the atmosphere dignified and solemn. Before the statues, in the Great Hall, several people stood. There were Taoism and secular, seemed like they were all Qingyun sect people. In front of the people, there were 7 sandalwood big chairs, 3 on each sides, and 1 in the front center. There were only 6 people sitting, the right row last chair was empty. Chapter 5 Acceptance. At then, the people in the hall were chatting, seemed to be in some discussion. The young priest who was leading the children in, respectfully spoke at the entrance. Sect head, various teacher uncles, disciple Changjan, instructed to bring the 2. Before he could finish, suddenly in the sacred solemn hall, a shrill shout was heard, interrupted him, "Ghost, evil ghost! Ghost!" Changjan was shocked, but the children were even more shocked. This voice although was shrill and unpleasant, but it was extremely familiar. Zhang Xiaofan couldn't care less, dashed in and shouted, Wang er Shu, is it you?" In his anxious state, his shouts were tense and tearful. The people heard him and felt pity. Behind the people, on a corner of the great hall, a man who dressed like a woodman, both hands clutching his head, rolled tightly into the corner, his entire body shaking. From the gaps behind his fingers, cries of "Ghost, ghost," were heard. The children both immediately recognized the person as one of the woodmen from the village, his surname Wang, second child of the family, a kind person and loved to laugh. he was also amiable to the children and would always bring wild fruits for them whenever he had time after cutting wood in the mountain forests. Zhang Xiaofan, without thinking, dashed over to Wang Ershu, grabbed his shoulder, said loudly, "Wang Ershu, what exactly happened? Why were all of the villagers dead? And my mother, my father, what happened to them? Tell me." Wang Ershu heard Zhang Xiaofan asking a barrage of questions, seemed to comprehend, did not mutter, "Ghost, ghost," word, and slowly looked up at Zhang Xiaofan. The people in the hall immediately quietened down, even the person sitting on the chair couldn't help but stood up, looked over. But Wang Ershu's eyes were red, filled with fear and bewilderness. He silently looked at Zhang Xiaofan for a long while but did not speak, frowning tightly, seemed to be making an effort to think. At this time, someone from Qingyun sect couldn't help but step forward, was about to speak but was silently pulled by the person beside. Zhang Xiaofan saw that Wang Ershu did not have any response after a long while, only stared silently at himself, felt greatly anxious, loudly said, "Wang Ershu, what happened to you?" Unexpectedly Wang Ershu was startled by his shout, his body shook, his face fearful, suddenly rolled and scurried to a side, again hugged his head into a ball, crying incessantly, "Ghost, ghost, ghost." Immediately sighs were heard in the hall, the people looked disappointed, the person who had stood up also sat back down. Zhang Xiaofan wanted to pursue and ask but was stopped by Lin Jingyu. Zhang Xiaofan looked bewildered at him but Lin Jingyu, who had tears in his eyes, quietly said, "It's no use, he is already mad." Zhang Xiaofan's head suddenly rang out with a gent sound, he stood dumbly there. Lin Jingyu, who was older than him by a year, his thoughts were also more meticulous, glanced at the hall, saw the people were all wearing Qingyun sect robes, men and women, some priests, some secular. Most of them also carried weapons, long swords the majority. Among them the 6 who were seated, looked even more distinguished and stood out from the crowd. The 6 people, 3 were priests and 3 secular, the one in the middle was wearing dark green priest robes, celestial demeanor, both eyes gentle and bright, naturally he would be the well-known Qingyun sect head Reverend Daoshuan. Lin Jingyu pulled Zhang Xiaofan, came to the 6 people, knelt before Reverend Daoshuan, pong 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 kowtowed ceaselessly. Reverend Daoshuan looked carefully at them, sighed softly and said, "Poor children, you can get up." But Lin Jingyu did not move, looked up at the celestial-like person, miserably said, "Reverend, we are both young and ignorant, with such a calamity, we really do not know what we should do. You are resourceful and knowledgeable, have ability to know the past and future, please decide for us." Zhang Xiaofan was not as well-spoken as him, his mind was also in a mess, followed along and said, "Yes, deity grandfather, you must decide for us." The people couldn't help but smile upon hearing it. Zhang Xiaofan naturally was young and unrestrained in his words, but following which, their gazes fell onto Lin Jingyu. Lin Jingyu at his young age, faced a major crisis, and facing Reverend Daoshuan, who was a famous master, yet his words were still proper, clear-minded. This clear-headedness far surpassed normal children, not to mention that ignorant Zhang Xiaofan who treated Daoshuan as deity. The tragic Grass Temple Village incident was something unheard and unseen in 1,000 years Qingyun sect, and the incident happened right below the mountain, shocking the entire Qingyun sect. Reverend Daoshuan was shocked and enraged after receiving the news, immediately summoned the other 6 branches leaders for meeting. Right now, other than Small Bamboo Valley, the rest of the leaders were seated. Those people who could take on the responsibility as the leaders of the 7 branches, were naturally the elites in Qingyun sect, and the elites in Qingyun sect were naturally also the world's cultivated martial artists elites. Those seated, each one with bright gazes, right now everyone was also silently telling themselves, what a piece of beautiful jade. Reverend Daoshuan smiled and said, "I don't know about the future and the past, but since both of you reside at Qingyun Hill Foot, my Qingyun sect definitely will not stand by and do nothing. Just that I have a few questions to ask, I hope you all can give me a proper answer." Lin Jingyu nodded and said, "Yes, disciple will say all that I know." "Reverend, please ask." Reverend Daoshuan nodded and asked, "How did you escape this calamity?" Lin Jingyu was stunned for a moment, said, replying, "Reverend, last night I only remembered that I was home sleeping on my bed, but when I woke up in the morning, I was with Xiaofan lying under a pine tree in the wilderness. I don't know what had happened to. After which Xiaofan woke me up and we both ran back to the village, saw that scene, and fainted." Reverend Daoshuan frowned, looked at Zhang Xiaofan, said, "It was you who woke him up, then what was your recall?" Zhang Xiaofan thought for a moment and said, I too do not know why I was there. When I woke up I saw Jingyu beside and so I woke him up. Reverend Daoshuan and the other leaders looked at each other, their eyes puzzled. If a master had saved them, then why only these two children? If not, there was no other explanation. Reverend Daoshuan was silent for a moment, said, "So you are saying, both of you knew nothing about what happened last night?" Both of them replied together, "Yes." Reverend Daoshuan sighed and called, "Song Daran. Disciple is here." A Qingyun disciple acknowledged and walked out, tall and big, a layman's attire. He was standing behind a seated plump man, seemed like he was that person's disciple. Reverend Daoshuan said, "You were the first to discover the village incident, tell me again that day's incident." Song Daran's voice was loud and clear, said, "Yes. That morning, disciple and a few fellow branch brothers were returning after our errands and traveling by flight. When we passed by the village, disciple happened to look down and saw the village had 200 over corpses piled together, extremely horrible. Disciple and the rest of us quickly went down to investigate, and found these two children at the rear, saw them unconscious and so sent them back with one of junior disciple. Afterward, at the village latrine, he pointed to Wang or Shu who was curled up in a corner, found this person inside. However, he was looking lifeless and in a trance, no matter how disciple tried to ask him, he would not answer and only kept repeating, 'Ghost, ghost, evil ghost,' these words. Lin Jingyu's body shook, spoke trembling, 'This big brother, would like to ask if you have counted the numbers.' Song Daran's eyes had pity, said, 'I found a junior brother who had frequently traded wood with your village, he was familiar with your village villagers. With his identification and also with our count, the Grass Temple village 42 households and a total of 247 people, other than the two of you, are all dead.' Even though he was mentally prepared but after hearing Song Daran's affirmative words, Lin Jingyu and Zhang Xiaofan still could not help but saw darkness before their eyes, almost about to faint again. Reverend Daoshuan sighed softly, waved his left hand, a dark red bead flew out from his sleeve, to both of the children, at their forehead, heart rolled a few times, immediately they felt a refreshing energy entering their bodies. For some reason, their tense states also seemed to relax, felt mentally and physically exhausted, couldn't help themselves and lie on the great hall and fell asleep. Reverend Daoshuan waved his hand, those disciples standing started to bow and retreat out. In the great hall, only the 6 of them left. At this moment, that plump and short person spoke, "Sect head senior brother, you have used, composed bead, to temporarily calm them but when they wake up, what are you planning to do with them?" Reverend Daoshuan was silent for a moment, turned and spoke to the first Taoist sitting on left, "Kangsong junior brother, what do you think?" Kangsong Taoist was tall and big, his face serious, was the leader of Longsho Valley. In Qingyun sect, other than Reverend Daoshuan's oldest branch, his Longsho Valley was the most prosperous. Kangsong's character was stern, other than handling his own sect, he also handled the disciplinary matters of Qingyun sect. The disciples were usually reverent and respectful to Reverend Daoshuan but they were the most afraid of this taciturn Kangsong leader. Kangsong Taoist immediately frowned, after a while, said, "There are too many questions about this matter, for the moment I'm afraid we might need some time to investigate. But the Grass Temple village villagers have always been simple, we cannot stand by and do nothing for their orphans. I would think let's take them both into the sect." Reverend Daoshuan nodded, said, "That's right, I am of this opinion too. These two children have unfortunate lives, we should take care of them. But I have not taken in disciples for many years, I wonder which junior brother will take them in." At this moment, that plump short person, also Qingyun sect, Big Bamboo Valley, leader Tian Bui, said, "Sect head senior brother, from what I see, best not to let them enter the same branch. Their fates are similar, if they stay together, they would be reminded of the past every time they see each other, the vicious energy would be never ending, most afraid it would not be good in the future." Reverend Daoshuan thought and said, "Tian junior brother is right. Both of them are very young, encountering such a big change, we must do well to resolve the hatred in their hearts, as such it is best not to let them stay together. Then I would need 2 junior brothers to take them in." After speaking, he looked at the group. The other 5 leaders, their gazes almost at the same time landed on Lin Jingyu, lingering there, but no one glanced at Zhang Xiaofan beside. In the path of cultivation, aptitude was the most important, there was a saying, once genius comprehend enlightenment, far surpass 100 years of cultivation. And Qingyun sect understood this even more. When Qingyun sect was at its lowest point, It was only because a one exceptional Qingyi founder, although young in age but his aptitude surpassed others, comprehended the ancient writings and his cultivation surpassed the ancestors, brought the small Qingyun sect up to current full of vitality, extremely prosperous, and even till today is the world's leader for good faction. In addition, although famous teacher was naturally hard to find but disciple with excellent aptitude was as hard too. Lin Jingyu's aptitude was better than others, his foundation exceptional, each branch leader naturally saw it at the first glance. A silence for a while, Tian Buyi coughed and said, "Hee, sect head senior brother, you know that my big bamboo valley always lack people, this time let me help you resolve one." After speaking, his finger was about to point to Lin Jingyu but was blocked by Shang Zhengliang from Morning Sun Valley who quickly stood up, spoke to Reverend Daoshuan, sect head senior brother, "I felt an affinity with this child at first glance, I guess I have some fate with him, why not let him join mine?" Qingyun sect had a long history. Each branch appeared to be on harmony but internally they were competing with each other. Lin Jingyu whose aptitude surpassed others, nobody could predict if he would be the next Qingyi founder, at most it was only one more disciple, definitely they would not let the other branches take the chance. Initially with Reverend Daoshuan's awe and cultivation, who dared to snatch disciple from him but since he said that he was not taking, then how could they miss this good opportunity? Shang Zhengliang had just finished speaking. Sunset Valley Tianyan Taoist said, "Shang senior brother, your branch already has 200 disciples, if each also has affinity with you, then wouldn't you have too many fates?" Shang Zhengliang tuned red, was about to reply, Tian Buyi cut in, "Tianyan senior brother is right, speaking about disciple numbers, most of you have at least 100 and above, my big bamboo valley only has 7 people, it's not right too." "Why not?" Kangsong Taoist interrupted, said, "Tian junior brother, these 2 children have such tragic fates, we must give them the best care, and not how many people we have." After speaking, he turned and cupped his hands towards Reverend Daoshuan, said, "Sect head senior brother, this child is indeed good material, please allow me to take him, I will surely teach him with care and make him a talent, so as to console the dead villagers' spirits." Reverend Daoshuan was silent. Tian Buyi, Liang Junliang and the rest felt uneasy and as expected, Reverend Daoshuan said, "Kangsong junior brother is right too, then let him join your sect." Kangsong smiled and said, "Thank you sect head senior brother." The group saw it all, they were long acquainted with Kangsong and knew he had always been taciturn, today he was smiling because he was really happy inside his heart, they couldn't help but fume. However, because Reverend Daoshuan had spoken and Kangsong's Longsho Valley was powerful, they could only swallowed it down. Reverend Daoshuan paused, said, "Then this." Shang Zhengliang coughed, closed his eyes. Tianyan looked at the ceiling of the hall, as if he had suddenly discovered the drawings were especially beautiful. Tian Buyi laughed dryly, suddenly felt sleepy and was about to fall asleep. Zhang Shuchang from Return of the Wind Valley who did not had a chance to speak, went into meditation, as if he was not interested in this in the first place. Only Kangsan Taoist who had won, coldly glanced at them but still could not hide the smile in his heart. Reverend Daoshuan also felt awkward but he was a high figure, naturally would not say out that they were not taking because of the child core aptitude, he thought and immediately found a scapegoat. Tian junior brother. Reverend Daoshuan's was smiling amiably. Tian Buyi's heart jumped, immediately stood up and was about to speak but Reverend Daoshuan spoke first. "The Grass Temple village was first discovered by your disciple, seems like this child has an affinity with your branch. Hee, better you take him in." Tian Buyi panicked. Zhang Xiaofan's mediocre aptitude, at one glance it could be seen, he would only be a burden if he was taken, he naturally was displeased. He was about to argue but how would Daoshuan allowed him, spoke first, "All right, this matter has come to an end, junior brothers to carefully investigate this matter, understand?" The rest of them stood up, spoke together, "Yes." Reverend Daoshuan nodded, coughed a few times, without glancing at Tian Buyi, he walked quickly out of the hall. Until his figure had disappeared from the hall, in the crystal hall, loud laughters were heard. Song Darren was waiting outside the hall's entrance, finally saw the leaders coming out, went up to receive his teacher but saw him carrying Zhang Xiaofan, was stunned and asked, "Teacher, what happened?" Tian Buyi saw him, felt vexed and angrily said, "What do you mean what? Are you a fool, why aren't you taking him over quickly?" Song Darren quickly took over the sleeping Zhang Xiaofan. Tian Buyi infuriated, glanced sideways at Shang Zhengliang, Tianyan etc. who were secretly laughing at him, felt even more enraged, spoke loudly to Song Darren, "Quickly go, why are you in a daze there? After speaking, ignoring the rest, his right hand made a slash in the air, a flash of red and a red long sword appeared, drifted onto the sword and swiftly flew away. Song Darren for a moment was puzzled but at least understood he had gotten one more junior brother. He looked at Zhang Xiaofan, couldn't help but asked, "Little junior brother, I still don't know your name." Zhang Xiaofan was still sleeping, did not know his own fate, had made a turn unknowingly. Chapter 6 Acknowledging a Master. Zhang Xiaofan slowly came awake. After staring blankly for a while, he slowly sat up, the past gushed in like tide waters, into his heart. Like a nightmare. "Ah, you are awake, this is good." A sound was heard from the door, a person walked in. Zhang Xiaofan looked up, recognized that it was Song Darren whom he had met at Tongtian Peak, his stature tall, his appearance honest, with his current emotions, for some reason, when he saw this person whom he recognized, he felt a kinship. "Song big brother," Zhang Xiaofan called out. Song Darren, although was a burly fellow, couldn't help but also feel pity. He walked to the bed, patted Zhang Xiaofan's head, gently spoke, "Little junior brother, don't be upset, we will be one family from now on." Zhang Xiaofan was surprised, said, "What one family?" Song Darren smiled and explained to him regarding Tian Buyi taking him as disciple. That day at Tongtian Peak Crystal Hall, the small fights that happened between the various elders, he was unaware. Zhang Xiaofan heard it, for a moment was stunned. Qing Yun sect to him, this farmer boy, were like celestial beings. He never imagined that one day, he would have a chance to enter Qing Yun sect. Just that, this price that he paid was not something he was willing to. He clenched his teeth, knew that it was no use brooding on it, called out, "Song senior brother." Song Darren smiled and nodded, said, "Good good, little junior brother, you have slept for a day and night, you should be hungry right?" Zhang Xiaofan initially did not feel so. When he asked, his stomach grumbled in response. Song Darren smiled and said, "Come little junior brother, let's go eat something first, at the same time let me explain to you about our branch, and then we can go and greet teacher and teacher's wife, and other senior brothers." Zhang Xiaofan nodded, got down from the bed, then noticed the room he was in, similar to the rooms Qing Yun disciples staying at Tongtian Peak but seemed bigger. Song Darren led him out and explained at the same time, "Our big bamboo valley is not like other branches, we don't have many disciples, even including you, our numbers are not more than 10, therefore our houses are much spacious." While speaking, they walked out of the room. There was a similar small yard. After a few steps they walked out the yard. A winding corridor stretched before them but it was all within sight. There were only 10 rooms, far inferior to Tongtian Peak. Zhang Xiaofan followed Song Darren to the kitchen, understood from him that Big Bamboo Valley was started by Qingyi founder's 4th disciple Zheng Tong and a total of 6 generations including Tian Buyi. The situation has always been the same, their population small. And currently for the elders' generation, other than branch head Tian Buyi, there was only Suru, who was also Tian Buyi's wife. They have a daughter Tian Linger, 13 this year, older than Zhang Xiaofan by 2 years, therefore Zhang Xiaofan was indeed the little junior brother here. And Tian Buyi's disciples, Song Darren was the big senior brother, next was Wu Duya, Zheng Dali, Hidaji, Lu Daxin, Du Bishu. Zhang Xiaofan remembered by heart, "Oh, Duya senior brother, Dali senior brother, Daji senior brother, Daxin senior brother, Dashu senior brother." Song Darren smiled and said, "It's Du Bishu senior brother." Zhang Xiaofan was surprised, then realized and couldn't help but ask, "Why is this 6th senior brother different?" Song Darren said, "He was indeed called Dashu, but try calling it a few times." Zhang Xiaofan mumbled, "Du Dashu, Du Dashu, Du Dashu." Translator's note. Shu has the same pronunciation as uncle, realized it in his heart and immediately laughed. Song Darren also laughed, "So you know." Actually teacher wasn't that bothered but teacher's wife was vexed. After calling a few times said that Du junior brother was not observing respecting teacher etiquette, wanted to punish him and Du junior brother was half scared to death. Quickly requested teacher and teacher's wife to change his name, and so teacher's wife named him, Du Bishu. Try calling this name a few times. Zhang Xiaofan quietly repeated, Du Bishu, Du Bishu, Du Bishu. Translator's note. Literally means gamble sure lose. Laughed out and bent over. Song Darren deliberately wanted to make him laugh, to lessen his misery, as he watched Zhang Xiaofan being happy. His heart was delighted too, said, 6th junior brother had a habit of gambling before he joined the sect. And later on his affinity arrived and he was converted by teacher into the sect, although he never gambled money again but in normal times he liked to bet with others. Teacher's wife's intention also has a warning meaning to it. Zhang Xiaofan with his childlike mentality, smiled broadly, his sadness had faded much, and with big senior brother's warm approach, his fear of the future also slowly settled down. After having his meal in the kitchen, Song Darren brought Zhang Xiaofan to Big Bamboo Valley Main Hall, observed Silence Hall. All of Qingyun sect Big Bamboo Valley members had gathered there. Here red bricks covered the floor, red tiles and stone pillars. In the center of the hall, a huge, taiji, drawing was engraved. Overall it was all very simple. 2 chairs were arranged in the hall, 2 people sat on it. One was Tian Buyi, the other was a quiet, dignified, beautiful lady, looked to be around 30 plus, elegant and charming. A young girl stood beside her, her features delicate, a pair of eyes bright and shiny, extremely spirited, and looking lovable. As for the other 5 male disciples, stood in a row on the right, tall or short, fit or thin, right now their attention on Zhang Xiaofan. Song Darren walked up, respectfully said, "Teacher, teacher's wife, disciple has brought little junior disciple over." Tian Buyi snorted, was rather impatient, but that beautiful lady glanced at Zhang Xiaofan, said, "Darren, he has slept for a day and night, he must be hungry, bring him for some food first." Song Darren replied, replying teacher's wife, "I have already brought little junior brother to have his meal at the kitchen." Suru nodded, glanced at Tian Buyi, did not speak anymore. Tian Buyi snorted again and said, "Let's start." Zhang Xiaofan did not understand, heard Song Darren quietly whispered, "Little junior brother, quickly kneel down and kowtow to teacher." Zhang Xiaofan immediately knelt down, gu several times, heavy and loud. He, that young girl couldn't help but laugh. Suru smiled and said, "Good child, just kowtow 9 times will be enough." Zhang Xiaofan, oh, a sound, stopped, lifted his head up, everyone saw his red forehead, couldn't help but laugh. Tian Buyi saw it, felt that he couldn't be more foolish in thinking that he had to teach this idiot. His headache seemed to become even bigger. "All right, it is done." Tian Buyi, in an extremely foul mood, waved his hand and said, "Darren, I will leave him to you first. Our branch rules and regulations, and some beginner skills, you will teach him first." Song Darren acknowledged, said, "Yes." And then hesitated, spoke again, "But teacher, little junior brother is still young, this beginner homework." Tian Buyi rolled his eyes, "Do as follow," and stood up, did not even turn his head back and walked to the rear hall. The disciples bowed together and said, respectfully sending off teacher. Once Tian Buyi left, before the group spoke, the young girl, Tian Linger, already flashed over to Zhang Xiaofan, stared at him. Zhang Xiaofan watched her flower-like adorable face in front of him. Although still young but already the making of a beautiful lady, he had never seen such beautiful similar-aged girl in his village before, couldn't help but blush. Ha! Tian Linger, like having found a treasure, pointed to Zhang Xiaofan and laughed loudly, "Senior brother, look, he blush when he see me." The hall broke out in laughter. Zhang Xiaofan turned even redder. Suru walked over, reproached, "Linger, do not bully your junior brother." Tian Linger made a face but did not seem to regard her mother's words at all, stood straight and spoke to Zhang Xiaofan, "Hey, quickly call me senior sister." Zhang Xiaofan felt annoyed, but before his eyes, Tian Linger's bright eyes and pearly teeth flashed past, his heart for a moment lost, couldn't help but call out, "Senior sister." Tian Linger was the most junior at Big Bamboo Valley. Now that she actually had a junior brother, was extremely delighted, immediately felt superior, said, "Good, little junior brother, in the future you must listen to your senior sister." Zhang Xiaofan, faltering in his speech, replied, "Yes." Suru pulled her daughter over, said, "Be serious," and said to Song Darren, "Darren, little junior brother is still young, the homework might be too strenuous, please do take more care of him." Song Darren replied, "Yes." The other 5 disciples stood together, giggling and glancing over, looking as they were taking pleasure over his misfortune. And at this moment, Suru suddenly made a strange movement, as if stretching her muscles she turned her head, strangely as she always had an elegant bearing. Immediately, the giggling stopped, everyone kept quiet, as if trouble was approaching. Suru cleared her throat, "You all. Teacher's wife." A shout, it was Song Darren, whose forehead was sweating, shouted out. Suru frowned, said, "What?" The other 5 disciples called out at the same time, "Big senior brother, what are you trying to do?" Song Darren urgently said, "Teacher's wife, little junior brother has just joined the branch, disciple receiving teacher's orders, has to teach him the sect rules and regulations and also the homework, I will go now." Suru was silent for a moment, nodded and said, "You are right, you can go." "What?" the rest of them shouted. Song Darren coughed dryly twice, without more words, went forward and carried Zhang Xiaofan, before he could speak, immediately headed out while saying, "Little junior brother, let senior brother find a secluded spot and teach you the sect rules." Tian Linger smiled and followed along, feeling intrigued. Behind them someone scolded loudly, "Big senior brother, you are so shameless. Coward, comma. Zhang Xiaofan hearing it, felt bewildered, could not understand why senior brother was scolded a coward for teaching him the rules. While thinking of that, Suru suddenly with a shout, her voice clear and pleasant, like cutting through the ice and frost, "Shut up." Immediately the hall was silent. Suru was heard saying, "All of you good-for-nothing fellows, became so terrified once you saw that I am going to test your cultivation. In 5 years' time it will be Qingyun sect every 60 years, 7 branches martial contest. The last time you all have already half infuriated me and your teacher. This time if you still don't work hard, both of us will have to be mocked to death by our fellow branches. Quickly come, 5 of you together." Song Darren ran even faster, with vigorous strides, headed straight for the rear mountain after exiting the hall. Zhang Xiaofan lay on his shoulder, the 2 rows of trees beside Hu flew past, the speed extremely fast. Behind them Tian Linger, not knowing since when, wielded a scarlet jade silk, glowing an amber color, almost transparent, emitting a red glow, evidently a celestial weapon. Right now Tian Linger leisurely stood on the red silk, her hand casually made a formula, that scarlet silk flew her to midair, following closely behind Song Darren. Zhang Xiaofan had never seen such wonders, was stunned, saw Tian Linger flying with ease, his eyes immediately revealed envy. Tian Linger saw his expression, felt conceited, flew forward and came to Zhang Xiaofan's side, said, "How is it, am I powerful?" Zhang Xiaofan nodded vigorously, "Yes, senior sister, you are really powerful, you can actually be so fast while riding on a red cloth." Tian Linger was taken aback, and then realized what he meant by red cloth, was so angry that she made a sound but still couldn't help but laugh, "Big fool." Zhang Xiaofan felt puzzled, heard Song Darren laughed in front and said, "Little junior brother, what are you talking about? That, amber scarlet silk, is a famous treasure weapon cultivated by teacher's wife when she was young. Its magical effects and power extremely huge, even within our Qingyun sect. It is also a reputable celestial treasure weapon. How can it be? What a red cloth." He laughed loudly. Zhang Xiaofan turned red, sneaked a glance at Tian Linger, she smiled at him, her face revealing 2 small dimples. After traveling for a while, the 3 of them came to a small hill. Song Darren stopped and placed Zhang Xiaofan down. Tian Linger stopped and with a hand formula, the amber scarlet silk, rolled by itself and coiled at her waist, looked like an extremely nice-looking red belt. The hill was full of bamboos, some thick some thin, dense and exuberant. However, looking carefully, the bamboos here were different from normal, their appearance is black. Song Darren pointed to the bamboo forest, said to Zhang Xiaofan, "Little junior brother, our big bamboo valleys rule, newcomers have to come here every day to chop the bamboos. You are still young, the first 3 months you will only chop down 1 bamboo per day, as for thick or thin, it's up to you." When Zhang Xiaofan heard that Suru wanted Song Darren to take more care of him for his homework, he was wondering about the difficulty of the task, seemed like it was just a normal wood chopping task. He was born in the village and from a farmer's family, and also chopped woods a few times in the mountains, immediately felt relieved and smiled, "Big senior brother, I have chopped trees before, not to worry." Song Darren watched him, wanted to speak but stopped, smiled and said, "Then it is good. Let's slowly go back, I will show you the path in, next time you will come on your own, at the same time I will explain to you the rules." Tian Linger laughed and said, "Big senior brother, why do you came all the way here just to say inconsequential words, and still wanted to walk slowly back? Are you afraid of being beaten by my mum?" Song Darren turned red, ignored her and said to Zhang Xiaofan, "Little junior brother, you must remember, our branch first rule is to respect teacher." Actually for Qingyun sect Big Bamboo Valley, Tian Buyi was by nature slothful, although he was prideful but had always been lax in teaching his disciples, usually after passing them the skills he leave them to their own cultivations. However, his wife Suru was more driven and active, she was also famous when she was younger, a somebody. After marrying Tian Buyi, she had tamed down much but she still felt restless and also her disciples were not doing the branch justice. The 7 branches martial contest, held every 60 years, for a few series, Big Bamboo Valley disciples repeatedly lost, other than Song Darren who occasionally won, the rest usually exit with failures, becoming the internal laughingstock of Qingyun sect. Suru, being ambitious, couldn't accept, and so frequently acted on her husband's behalf to teach the disciples. Although her appearance was gentle, her character was rather impatient and her cultivation high. If she was not careful, her disciples would be beaten like frightened rats, wounds and bruises all over, and so the group feared this beautiful teacher more than that short and fat teacher. As the sky was darkening, the sun set in the west, the horizon a brilliant sunset glow. The sunset shone onto Big Bamboo Valley. A big and two small group of people slowly walked to the front of the mountain, the housing far ahead at the summit. Long howling were heard, among it a few pitiful human cries of pain. Chapter 7 The Beginning. It was dinner time, the sky had already turned dark. In Big Bamboo Valley, the rear mountain was covered in large patches of bamboo forests. The buildings were all at the front of the mountain. The biggest and also the most important was the main hall, Observed Silence Hall. Tien Bui couple and their daughter lived in one of the rear halls. Beside the Observed Silence Hall was the disciples' dormitory winding corridor, but because of their small numbers, the buildings were more than the population. Everyone occupied one room, even the newcomer, Zhang Xiaofan, also had one room. Comparing just the housing condition, surprisingly Big Bamboo Valley surpassed their fellow branches. What was left were only the training Taiji cave, kitchen and dining area. Right now the disciples were all gathered in the dining area. Lao Lu translator's note. Number 6 Dubishu, who was in charge of cooking, brought in the dishes one by one. Most were vegetables and less meat dishes. The disciples one by one sat on the right side of the long table. Song Darren sat the foremost, Zhang Xiaofan sat at the end seat. At the head of the table and opposite, a large chair and two smaller ones were placed. Seemed like those were for Tien Bui and family. Zhang Xiaofan glanced at the empty seat beside him. It was Lao Lu Dubishu's seat, who was still busy. After a while, he finally served all the dishes, washed his hands and sat back at his seat, waited together with the rest for teacher. Dubishu looked rather young, his face thin and sharp, big eyes forming triangle, looking sneakily and active, very witty. After he sat down, he glanced at Zhang Xiaofan, smiled and said, "Little junior brother, what is your name?" Zhang Xiaofan replied honestly, "Zhang Xiaofan." Dubishu nodded, pointed to himself, said, "I am your sixth senior brother Dubishu." Zhang Xiaofan respectfully called out, "Sixth senior brother." Dubishu coughed lightly, patted his shoulder, smiled and said, "You can try your senior brother's cooked food later." Zhang Xiaofan looked at the table full of dishes, the smell of food assaulting him, couldn't help but swallow his saliva and nodded readily. Dubishu suddenly laughed, extremely suspicious, pointed to the great hall entrance, said, "Little junior brother, in a while teacher's wife and little junior sister will be coming in from there, let's make a bet, all right?" Zhang Xiaofan was stunned, the others also turned around, their faces smiling. Lao Lu Daxin, who was sitting before Dubishu, laughed and said, "Lao Lu, your urge to gamble started again." Sitting beside, Hidaji, who looked gaunt and keen-witted, laughed and said, "It must be he has not won for a long while, and now planning to scam a little child." Shoo, shoo, shoo. Dubishu waved his hands successively, ignoring the rest, smiled and said to Zhang Xiaofan, "Little junior brother, you guess who will be the first to step through this door?" You have just joined the sect, I'll let you guess first, don't say senior brother bully you." Lao Erwudia, who was sitting afar, called out loudly, "Little junior brother, since it's a bet, ask him first what would he do if he loses, what would he do if he wins?" Dubishu snorted, said, "Are you all afraid that I would go back on my words? I, Dubishu, roam the world, depends on my good reputation of being an honorable gambler." The rest laughed, "You never won before. Little junior brother, if you win, I will help you with bamboo cutting for 10 days, if you lose, you will help me wash with 10 days of dishwashing, how is it?" Everyone laughed again. Song Darren laughed and scolded, "Good for nothing." Zhang Xiaofan looked at his senior brother's warm smiles, their attitudes kind, totally treating him as their own. His heart felt warm and said, "All right." Dubishu slapped his thigh, his entire self immediately looking alive, his face beaming, said, "Little junior brother, then who do you think will come in first?" Everyone looked at Zhang Xiaofan. Zhang Xiaofan pondered, "Qing Yun sect honored respecting teacher, most likely Tien Bui teacher will first come in." Immediately said loudly, "I guess teacher will be the first." Everyone laughed. Lu Daxin shook his head and said, "Didn't expect that today would be tricked successfully by Lao Lu for once." Dubishu was extremely happy, saw Zhang Xiaofan's perplexed face, happily said, "Little junior brother, let me tell you, actually every time when teacher and his family arrives, usually little junior sister will be the first to dash in." Ha ha, later you will come and help me to wash the dishes. Zhang Xiaofan scratched his head, couldn't help but laughed, nodded and said, yes, sixth senior brother. Lao San, Zheng Dali who looked short and stout, laughed and said, Lao Lu, aren't you ashamed? Du Bishu rolled his eyes, said, what are you talking about Lao San, I didn't force or coerce, you bet you pay, right little junior brother. Zhang Xiaofan nodded, suddenly Song Darren said, teacher is here. Everyone was surprised, all stood up, faced the entrance, receiving their teachers. The next moment, Tian Buyi's short and fat figure appeared at the entrance, and then behind him was nobody. He came alone. Everyone was stunned. Du Bishu couldn't help but ask, teacher, where is teacher's wife and little junior sister? Tian Buyi glanced sideways at him, indifferently said, your teacher's wife brought little junior sister back to her mother's place. Everyone was surprised, but the next moment, someone laughed out, looking as Tian Buyi walking leisurely in. Zhang Xiaofan looked embarrassed, wanted to laugh but did not dare. Du Bishu stared dumbfoundedly. Tian Buyi sat at his chair, waved his hand and said, let's eat. The disciples then sat down, each one looking amused and glancing at Du Bishu. Tian Buyi glanced at Zhang Xiaofan, said to Song Darren, have you told him the sect rules and taboos? Song Darren nodded and said, yes, 12 sect rules, 20 taboos, I have told little junior brother. As for the foundation training skills, disciple saw that little junior brother looked quite tired on his first day, intend to formally teach him tomorrow. Tian Buyi nodded, expressed his consent, said to Zhang Xiaofan, Lao Qi. Zhang Xiaofan did not register yet. Du Bishu pushed him, this then made him realize that teacher was calling himself, quickly stood up and said, yes disciple is here. Tian Buyi shook his head, reduced a few degrees of confidence towards this slow reaction, said, you will first follow big senior brother, remember to learn sincerely, Tao teachings are infinite, diligence is your boat, even though aptitude is poor, but if you are determined and hardworking, you might be able to succeed, understand? Zhang Xiaofan, as if receiving emperor's command, respectfully replied, yes. Tian Buyi waved his hand, said, eat. Zhang Xiaofan was still young and small, held his big bowl and sitting on the chair, he was unable to get the dishes which were slightly further, but Du Bishu beside him was rather kind, took some for him a few times, quietly smiled and said, little junior brother, eat more. He didn't look like he minded losing, his sportsmanship was indeed good. Zhang Xiaofan felt gratitude, nodded successively, ate a while, quietly asked, sixth senior brother. Du Bishu turned his head and said, what? Zhang Xiaofan said, why did teacher's wife still has her mother's place? In his little heart, Qingyun sect members were all celestial-like, would not be having secular relations. Du Bishu spat, of course she would have, teacher's wife is also human. Just that teacher did not mean her real parents' place, he was referring to where she came from, Little Bamboo Valley, where Shuiyu Master is. Zhang Xiaofan was surprised, what? Du Bishu suppressed his voice and said, teacher's wife is from Little Bamboo Valley, and Little Bamboo Valley's branch leader, Shuiyu Master, is her senior sister, on very good terms. However, for some reason, teacher's wife who is as beautiful as a flower, actually married teacher, heard that at that time many male teacher uncles couldn't get over it. Pa! A chopstick hit Du Bishu's forehead, immediately leaving a red mark. Both of them startled, it was Tian Buyi who was looking infuriated, a chopstick missing from his hand. Du Bishu turned and stuck out his tongue at Zhang Xiaofan, both of them dared not make a sound, quietly ate. At this moment, Song Darren said to Tian Buyi, teacher, this time sect head reverend called for 7 branches martial gathering, why did only Shuiyu Master not come? Tian Buyi snorted, took up another pair of chopsticks, said, isn't it because that old nun pretended to be sick, dispatched someone over and told sect head senior brother that she had a fever and couldn't make it, sect head senior brother is also at fault, actually believed it. Humph, today if she is also here, even if I am unable to get the good one, I would also not be befallen. The 4th disciple Hidaji coughed dryly and quietly said, teacher, Shuiyu teacher Ant's branch never accepts male disciple. Tian Buyi paused, shook his head and said, and your teacher's wife, once she heard that Shuiyu is sick, immediately took Linger over to visit, as if the sky has collapsed, really. The disciples looked at each other, everyone in glee. Song Darren hesitated and asked carefully, teacher, then I wonder how many days would teacher's wife stay over at Shuiyu teacher Ant there? Tian Buyi glared at him, unhappily said, what do you mean how many days? Today she went over, tonight she will be back. The disciples sighed, each one looking disappointed. Tian Bui looked around, snorted, said to Song Darren, "Today teacher's wife checked your trainings again." Before Song Darren could reply, Lao Erwu Dia spoke first. "Teacher, you don't have to ask him, big senior brother today escaped at the last minute, so no sense of shame." Song Darren angrily replied, "Nonsense, I was following teacher's instruction to help little junior brother." The rest immediately hissed and booed. After about an hour, the group dispersed. Zhang Xiaofan instead stayed and helped Du Bishu with the dishes. Du Bishu smiled and said, "Little junior brother, many thanks, but I can handle it here. You have won the bet, don't worry, tomorrow I will help you with the bamboo cutting." Zhang Xiaofan felt rather embarrassed, was about to say something but Song Darren's voice was heard, "Lao Lu, don't help him." He walked in from the entrance, said to Zhang Xiaofan, "Little junior brother, come, I will bring you to your room." Zhang Xiaofan nodded. Du Bishu instead asked, "Big senior brother, what did you say?" Song Darren said, "Little junior brother has just joined, he needs to build his foundation, it is not the time to skive." Du Bishu scratched his head, said, "You are right, why not like this, little junior brother, consider this I owe you, next time if you need me to help you with anything, just let me know, alright?" Zhang Xiaofan said, "Sixth senior brother, why not let's forget it, anyway." Du Bishu turned solemn, righteously said, "What do you mean, am I someone who can't differentiate good from bad, loyalty and villainous, person? I've promised you therefore I must do it, if not I will be subject for ridicule next time by the other brothers." Zhang Xiaofan nodded but in his heart, he didn't understand what this had to do with good and bad, loyalty and villainous. Song Darren pulled Zhang Xiaofan's hand, said, "Little junior brother, come, I will bring you to your new room." Both of them walked out, the sky had darkened, a clear bright moon slowly rose, hung in the east. They walked past the observed silence hall. Zhang Xiaofan peered in, saw that all lights had extinguished, leaving darkness, only moonlight shone before the hall, appearing rather eerie. After walking a while, he returned to that winding corridor where the disciples stayed. Song Darren brought him to the back last room on the right, said, "Little junior brother, earlier in the day the room that you woke up in is my room. The other junior brothers' rooms are in accordance to their seniority, all are on the right, the 7 rooms on the left are empty." After pausing for a moment, he asked, "You are staying by yourself, will you be afraid?" Zhang Xiaofan shook his head. Song Darren smiled and said, "This is right, we as a man, how can we fear loneliness? Come, let's go in." Zhang Xiaofan looked at the unfamiliar yet would be his future residence, a small yard, on the left a pine tree, on the right 5, 6 tall bamboos, about the height of 2, 3 humans. In the center, small pebbles formed a small path, lawn grasses on both sides of it, the night breeze blew over, the bamboos rustled, a faint grass fragrance drifted over, refreshing. Song Darren opened the room door, went in and lit the lamp, said, "Little junior brother, come in." Zhang Xiaofan walked in, saw that the room was furnished as simply as Song Darren's room, table, chairs and bed, nothing else. Song Darren said, "I have cleaned up the place today, you can just stay here for now. Living in the mountains is quiet and hard, and you are still young, maybe you will feel lonely but we as cultivators, by right should bear the various hardship trainings, you should also look after your own daily needs from now on." Zhang Xiaofan said, "I understand big senior brother." Song Darren nodded, looked around and said, "If there's nothing else I will go back now. You are also tired after a day, have an early rest too." Zhang Xiaofan acknowledged, sent his big senior brother to the door, suddenly recalled something, said, "Big senior brother, why is it that it has just got dark but none of the senior brothers are out for walks?" Song Darren smiled and said, "You are unaware, we have been here learning for at least 10 over years, seldom leave this place, we are already very familiar with the big bamboo valley and so can't be bothered to walk around. Like Lao Si love to read books, Lao Er love to sing, those like Lao San who are more hard-working will be training in their rooms, most don't come out." Zhang Xiaofan comprehended then. Song Darren laughed and smoothed his head, after giving a few more instructions, turned and left. Zhang Xiaofan returned to his room, closed the door, in that instant the entire world seemed to turn silent suddenly, not a single human sound. He quietly walked to the table, sat dumbly for a moment, with nothing to do, he blew out the candle, removed his outer clothing, lay on the bed, tossed and turned for some time and fell asleep. Ah! In the darkness, Zhang Xiaofan cried out softly, turned and sat up, panting. He had dreamt he was back to the village, saw his parents and his other friends, and his uncles and aunts, joyous and harmonious, but suddenly they all turned into corpses, blood flowing like rivers, extremely horrific. His body trembled and woke up in shock. He sat for a while on the bed, his breathing gradually calmed, his eyes accustomed to the darkness, saw the windows slightly ajar, the moonlight faintly shone in, onto the grey bricks ground, like frost. Zhang Xiaofan, fully awake, sat up and walked to the door. Jia opened and walked out. The surroundings was silent, indistinctly sounds of insects could be heard, twice, quietly, the moonlight like water, spilled onto him. He lifted his head at the sky, saw the multitude stars, the moon was bright and clear in the sky. I wonder how Jingyu is now, is he too finding it hard to fall asleep? He quietly muttered, sighed and turned back to his room. Suddenly his bosom loosened, something fell out from his inner clothing. Zhang Xiaofan was surprised, bent and picked up, it was that deep purple, dark bead. There was a tiny hole in the center of the bead, seemed like it was strung on Puji's jade meditation beads. These days he had been through eventful days, he had long forgotten about this and suddenly recalled that Puji had instructed him to throw this bead away. Thinking about that, his heart suddenly felt anguish. His parents did not leave anything for him. Puji though had brief affinity with him, but after a night, he felt like family, and this ugly-looking bead was the only thing Puji left him. Zhang Xiaofan raised his hand, held the bead up, facing the moon. Against the moonlight, the bead's color actually turned lighter, became light purple, translucent. Indistinctly there was also a faint green color churning within it, as if alive and wanted to break out. Just that each time it came near the surface, a tiny, wan, character, blocked it back. Zhang Xiaofan watched it for a while, felt rather fond of it, and as this was the only item that he could remember Puji by, he couldn't bear to throw it away. After thinking for a long time, he took a red string from his neck. It was given by his parents for longevity and keeping him safe. Most families would hung some golden pendant, silver lock, but his family was poor and so it was only a red string. He tied the bead with the string securely and hung it around his neck, near to his chest. It was not cold to the touch and instead felt somehow warm. He laughed to himself, again looked up at the moon, turned and walked back to his room and slept. His first day at Qingyun sect ended just like that. Chapter 8 Impart Skills. Zhang Xiaofan. A loud shout, the voice sweet but it was deafening. Zhang Xiaofan woke up from his sleep, opened his eyes and suddenly saw a loud mouth, 2 rows of sharp teeth, horizontal before him. He shouted in shock, ah! KKKK, a series of laughs were heard from the back. Zhang Xiaofan managed to calm down and then realized it was a large yellow dog, almost half a human high, a body of shiny yellow fur, crouched on his bed, and behind the yellow dog, Tian Linger wearing red, tight clothing, laughing till she was bent over. Zhang Xiaofan secretly glanced at that big dog. It was huge, its teeth sharp, a long tongue lolled to the side, looking very fierce. He had never seen such huge dog. Feeling afraid but saw Tian Linger clear smile, stammered and asked, "Senior sister, what's the matter?" "What's the matter?" Tian Linger smiled and said, suddenly her face solemn, frowned and said loudly, "The sun is already up and you are still asking me what's the matter. Hurry and get up, I am going with you to chop bamboos up the mountain." Zhang Xiaofan was stunned, asked in bewilderment, "You are going too?" Tian Linger said, "What nonsense, all new disciples for the first 3 years have to go up the mountain to chop black not bamboo. I started from 10 years old and this year is my last." "Hey, you are still lying on the bed." Zhang Xiaofan quickly acknowledged, carefully went around that big dog and came down from the other side of the bed, scrambled to dress up. Tian Linger shouted, "Catch!" threw over a firewood axe. Zhang Xiaofan caught it with both hands. It was an ordinary axe and also felt rather heavy. Prepared and packed, he asked Tian Linger, "Senior sister, do you want to call big senior brother together?" Tian Linger rolled her eyes at her, said, "Didn't you hear me? Only new disciples are required to do this homework, only you and me are going to chop the bamboos, let's go." After speaking, she waved her hand and before Zhang Xiaofan moved, the big yellow dog suddenly stood up, jumped down from the bed, shook its tail, barked wong wong twice at Zhang Xiaofan, bared its teeth and then ran out. Zhang Xiaofan felt its barks sounded familiar, recalled that he had heard it when he came back with big senior brother, seemed like it was this yellow dog, couldn't help but secretly exclaimed, "Qingyun sect is so powerful, even a random dog here is also much bigger than our village ones." He followed Tian Linger out of the room, saw the day was still early, it was still dawn. They walked out of the winding corridor and towards the rear mountain. In the distance there was still mist drifting among the mountains. 2 humans and a dog walked towards Big Bamboo Valley rear mountain. The mountain which Song Darren carried Zhang Xiaofan over, it seemed a short distance and the journey there was smooth too. However, today he was walking it by himself, only halfway, and he felt the mountain was getting steep. The distance seemed to be much longer than he had thought. Tian lingered beside him, though did not use that scarlet red silk, was still walking easily. The red small figure wavered among the mountains, light and quick. That yellow dog was even better, ran ahead and back, a moment scurrying in front and another moment sneaking off, at times worming into the forest beside the path, not knowing what it was doing, and after a while, noises were heard from the trees and it suddenly wormed out from another side, looking very excited. Again another hour, Zhang Xiaofan was already panting heavily, his legs were sore and tired, extremely exhausted. Tian Linger walking ahead, saw his state, snorted and said, "Really useless, let's stop and rest." Zhang Xiaofan quickly nodded, saw down immediately, pant heavily. The big yellow dog was not seen, not knowing where it had scurried to. Zhang Xiaofan after a long while, finally caught his breath. He sat on the path, looked down, the Big Bamboo Valley towering and lofty, the surrounding mountains were all shorter, looking rather arrogant. "Senior sister, I have something that I will like to ask you, not sure." Tian Linger heard him ask timidly, looked over, had a moment of being superior, subconsciously arranged her hair, her face solemn, said, "You can ask. Why do we have to chop bamboos for homework? I thought homeworks are all cultivation exercises." Tian Linger pursed her lips, said, "What do you know, a cultivated person, his body is the most important. My mother said, if your physical condition is not good, even if you have supreme skills, it is also difficult to cultivate. Like one of our Qing Yun sect supreme amazing skills, celestial sword wield thunder true formula." Zhang Xiaofan's body trembled, his expression changed. Tian Linger was surprised, "What happened to you?" Zhang Xiaofan blinked, his face conflicting expression, stammered and said, Nothing, this name seems very long, very powerful." Tian Linger stared at him, said, "Of course it is powerful, this is one of our sect unparalleled skills to subdue mountain, not many is able to cultivate it. I heard from my father, to use this skill, the person must use his own body as the stimulant, like celestial army sharp knife, draw down the celestial thunder from the 9 skies, brilliant might of the heavens celestial power, it is really sweeping away all obstacles, unsurpassed force." Zhang Xiaofan sighed and said, "It is." Tian Linger continued, "So you think, although you have the true formula to protect your body but the might of the celestial thunder, ordinary humans would have been turned to ash the moment they touch it. The wielder although has deep cultivation but if his body is weak, in a short while most likely he himself would be first struck dead by the thunder and lightning, not to say sweeping away the obstacles." She glanced at Zhang Xiaofan, continued, "And so my dad instructed you to do this homework is all for your own good, look at your unwilling face." Zhang Xiaofan was startled, quickly jumped up and said, "There is no such thing, I definitely will not be disrespectful to teacher, not to say unwilling. Ah, I have already rested enough, let's go now." After speaking, he picked up the axe and strode off at a fast speed. Tian Linger looked at his back figure, smiled and followed. Finally they reached the small summit. Zhang Xiaofan was already breathless, saw that before the bamboo forest, the yellow dog was already lying there. When it saw them, it barked a few times in their direction. Without getting up, it turned its head away. Zhang Xiaofan was stunned, said, "So fast. Are you talking about Da Huang?" Tian Linger, not looking red or panting, walked from behind. Zhang Xiaofan pointed to that dog and asked, "It is called Da Huang?" Tian Linger said, "Yes, don't belittle it, it is very powerful." Zhang Xiaofan muttered, "That, looking at its size, one will know it has been raised for at least 20 years. Tian Linger laughed, "Impossible." Zhang Xiaofan said in surprise, "It is not 20 yet, Da Huang really grows well." At this moment, Da Huang fiercely barked at Zhang Xiaofan. Tian Linger said, "I am saying how would it that young? Let me count, I think we have it when 4th senior brother came, that is 70 years, no, 3rd senior brother said it was here when he arrived too, that will be 97 years already." "Ah," she suddenly exclaimed, startling Zhang Xiaofan. He quickly asked, "What is it?" Tian Linger feeling very pleased, said, "Now I remember, there was once where my mum argued with my dad when I was still small, In her anger she said to slay that yellow dog that Dad reared since young to make a stew of dog meat. Dad was so angry, Da Huang also did not dare to come home for a few days because of that. Zhang Xiaofan was bewildered. Da Huang did not dare to go home. Tian Linger said, yes, Da Huang has lived for a very long time. He understands human, knows my mum's powers and really feared for his life and so sneaked away. How is it? Amazing, right? Amazing. Zhang Xiaofan sincerely said, not knowing if that was referring to Da Huang or admiring his teacher's wife. He took a few more glances at Da Huang but Da Huang ignored him, snorted, its tag swished a few times and it turned its head over, lie lazily on the ground. Both of them by now had reached the forest. Zhang Xiaofan said to Tian Linger, senior sister, when I first reached Tongtian Peak, I saw a much bigger beast than Da Huang, heard senior brother referring to it as the water Kirin. Is Da Huang a spiritual beast like it? Tian Linger walked into the forest, shook her head and said, no, Honorable Spirit is an ancient beast, a spiritual type from primeval age, far surpassed Da Huang, incomparable. While speaking, she led Zhang Xiaofan and traversed the forest. After a while, they came to an area where there was more thinner bamboos. The bamboos were about a finger thick, extremely slender. It is here, for the next 3 months you will only need to chop one daily. Tian Linger said to him. It's so thin and only one? Zhang Xiaofan asked in surprise. Tian Linger humphed, said, try chopping it. Zhang Xiaofan nodded, took the axe and walked to one, assessed it and chopped. A loud crisp sound, the axe as if hitting a stone, trembled in Zhang Xiaofan's palms painfully. The slender bamboo bent forward and then sprang back. Zhang Xiaofan, unable to avoid in time, was hit hard on the head. Immediately a red mark appeared. KK, Tian Linger bent over with laughter. After a while, said, you will continue here, I will go and do my own homework. After speaking, she smiled and left. Zhang Xiaofan rubbed the painful area on his face, saw only a faint white mark on the bamboo, sucked in a breath of cold air. The whole morning, Zhang Xiaofan chopped, slashed, saw, grinded, pressed, tore in other methods and after 4 hours, the afternoon sun rose up in the mid-sky, his entire body in sweat, his hands and legs sore and weak, only made a small hole in this black bamboo. At that moment a song was heard. Tian Linger was humming an unknown song, skipping over, saw Zhang Xiaofan's miserable state in the bamboo, shook her head, raised the axe and was about to chop. Zhang Xiaofan hurriedly said, senior sister, what are you doing? Tian Linger impatiently said, helping you to chop. Zhang Xiaofan shook his head firmly, panting heavily said, not needed, thanks senior sister but this is my homework, I will finish it. Tian Linger snorted, pointed at the sky and said, do you know what time it is now already? Zhang Xiaofan's character was stubborn, clenched his teeth and said, even if I have to chop until night time, I will. Idiot. Tian Linger suddenly placed her hands on her waist and scolded loudly. Zhang Xiaofan was shocked, turned speechless. Tian Linger with a superior air, angrily said, you did not consider the time or think about others. If you chop until it's night time then do I have to accompany you until then? If you really want to prove your worth, then you should come here every day from now on and work hard, try your best to complete the homework in 4 hours and not only think of yourself with such words. After speaking, she chopped down, pi 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 pi, 4 sounds, that bamboo immediately fell. Zhang Xiaofan stared in shock. Tian Linger glanced at him, indifferently said, let's go back, and started to walk out. Zhang Xiaofan felt ashamed and secretly decided to use 120% of hard work on his homework. Trudging his tired self back to the big bamboo valley, it was already noon. Tian Linger without speaking walked to the rear hall of the observed silence hall. Zhang Xiaofan was lost for a moment, shifted his direction with difficulty and headed to his own room. In the winding corridor he saw Song Darren standing there. Song Darren smiled and said, how is it, little junior brother, must be exhausted. Song Darren looked at his young age but his character was so stubborn, couldn't help but laugh, walked back to his room with him, said, there is usually hot water in the kitchen, you can take some for your bath next time, after a while we are having lunch soon, you rest first and I will come over to call you, after lunch we still have homework. Zhang Xiaofan was taken aback, there is still homework in the afternoon. Song Darren saw his reaction, was surprised and then understood, laughed and said, oh, it's my mistake, afternoon is usually our disciples train their cultivation, I will impart some beginner skills to you today. Zhang Xiaofan heaved a sigh of relief, felt surprised and happy, whispered, big senior brother, those skills are very powerful, is it hard to learn? Song Darren smiled and said, as you cultivate to a deeper level, it is naturally powerful. As to whether will it be difficult, it depends on the individual aptitude. But even if the aptitude is poor, it is no concern. You have also heard what teacher said last night, Tao teachings are infinite, diligence is your boat, as long as you are determined, work hard and train, even how difficult it is, you will also succeed. Zhang Xiaofan nodded earnestly. During the lunch, Tian Bui asked about Zhang Xiaofan's homework. Tian Linger reported with much flavor, making Zhang Xiaofan turn red and ashamed to look up. Tian Bui heard his daughter's report, shook his head, waved and only say 2 words, let's eat. Tian Bui couldn't be bothered to reprimand Zhang Xiaofan, but to Zhang Xiaofan, he felt that teacher cared much for him, but yet he couldn't do well. Teacher did not reprimand him, extremely magnanimous, it was really a rare mentor. He felt guilty, did not speak much and only swore in his heart to work hard in the future to repay his mentor. After lunch, Tian Bui as usual strutted and swagged back to his observed silence hall. The other disciples headed to Taiji Cave. Only Song Darren and Zhang Xiaofan came back to the room, said, little junior brother, our branch focus extremely on the foundation. Since you are new, I will first impart you the basics. After you memorized it, train on your own. If you have any questions you can come and find me, understand? Zhang Xiaofan nodded, his heart excited. Song Darren with a serious face, said, there is another matter, I have to warn you first. Our sect amazing skills, profound and ingenious, demons and evil spirits, wants to know it. You must swear solemnly, after learning it, if it's not own sect, you can never impart to others. Zhang Xiaofan, a rush of emotions, felt faint for a moment but then became alert, his little face determined, said, yes. The heavens above, disciple Zhang Xiaofan in the future if reveal Qingyun sect secret skills, will suffer the 5 thunders and die without a burial place. Song Darren nodded and smiled, made him sit before the table, first taught him how to meditate, deep thoughts and roughly explained to him the body meridians and energies, and finally imparted the Taiji Zan Qing Wei, first level skills. Taiji Zan Qing Wei is the supreme foundation skill of Qingyun sect, and it was comprehended by Qingyun Z 2000 years from the nameless ancient scroll, refined by generations of Qingyun leaders. Until today, it was already a supreme skill that could challenge the creation of heavens and earth. Taiji Zan Qing Wei had a total of 3 realms, Jade, Shang and Tai. Qingyun disciples, including many intelligent and clever ones, in their lifetimes, would not be able to break past Jade, but even though it was so, with Jade realm skills, it was already rare in the world. In Qingyun sect, there were almost 1,000 disciples, but those that could break past Jade to Shang, with Reverend Daoshuan as the leader, there was only slightly more than 10. But with these people, Qingyun sect became one of the most powerful sects. As for the legendary Supreme Realm, Tai Ching Realm, it was said that only that rare genius of a generation, Qingyi founder, was able to reach it. Chapter 9 Buddhism and Taoism. Song Darren, who took on the role as a teacher for the first time, saw Zhang Xiaofan cupped his chin in his hands, looking mesmerized by the teachings, couldn't help but become more excited and spoke with fervor and assurance. Taiji Zan Qing Wei training process begins from easy to difficult. Jade Qing Realm first level realm most of the people are able to achieve in the first year, but after which, the difficulties and complexities will start to surface. The second level, most of them needed to practice for 5 years. The third level is a watershed level. Those that are mediocre will come to a standstill here for the rest of their lives, and those that are better, it is not surprising that they practice it for 50 or 60 years. Zhang Xiaofan stared tongue-tied. Song Darren smiled and continued. In actual fact, Taiji Zan Qing Wei's principal cultivation method would more or less be completed by the third level, following which would depend on one's self-cultivation and aptitude to progress. The higher skilled elders might be able to advise some pointers, but that would only be from their experiences, preventing the disciples from going down detours. And of course, the detours were mostly 100 years in numbers. And to be able to practice Taiji Zan Qing Wei till Jade Qing Realm 4th level, it would be considered having the foundation for thousands of skills, and would be able to start practicing other rare skills and create their own magical treasures. Magical treasures, secret weapons to say, their origins started very long ago. Legends said that the various celestials and spirits all had their own celestial weapons and wielded great powers. And in the mortal world, the cultivated true Wei Taoists with the initial power of heaven and earth creation, had great powers. Those lower skilled could fly in the sky, swift as the wind and quick as lightning. Those higher could even shake the heaven and earth, destroy mountains and break river flows. And the material for the magical treasures also varied. Thousands of strange and hundreds of rare, But there was only one point to note: the weapon material determined the power of the weapon. If ordinary metal was used to wield, celestial sword wield thunder true formula, before it could hit the enemy, that sword would have turned to ashes with its owner. As to Qingyun sect, because Qingyi founder received the ancient sword, Zhu Xian, in the illusory moon cave, he was almost invincible across the world. Most of the descendants envied and admired, and most likely they were using celestial swords to practice. 1,000 years later, chivalrous swordsmen emerged from the later generations. It almost became an unspoken rule of Qingyun sect: if the sect changed its name to Qingyun Sword Sect, it could even be possible. But until here, one must mention Big Bamboo Valley Tian Buyi. He himself was also trained in swordsmanship. His weapon, Scarlet Fire, was one of Qingyun sect's famous swords, but to his disciples, for some reason, he had never encouraged them to train using swords. Not only that, he even frequently egged them to train using other types of weapons. This was rather disapproved in Qingyun sect, but firstly there was not a written rule on it. Secondly, Tian Buyi's disciples' aptitude were also mediocre, their population sparse, so the rest just let it be. In the Big Bamboo Valley disciples, Song Daren's cultivation was the highest, already achieved till Jade Qing Realm 5th level, following closely was Lao Si, Hidaji, who was at level 4. Although he came in later than Wu Duya, Zheng Dali, but among the disciples, he was the smartest and so caught up faster even though he came in later. As for Lao or Wu Duya, Lao San Zheng Dali, Lao Wulu Daxin, Lao Lu Du Bishu, all were bitterly struggling at Jade Qing Realm 3rd level. As for their junior sister, Tian Linger, who was bright and clever, she received her parents' devoted teachings since young. Although she only started to chop bamboos at the age of 10, her training in Taiji Zan Qingwei had already been a few years. From a young age, she actually reached Jade Qing Realm 4th level at 13 and could wield the magical treasure. She was already known in Qingyun sect to be one of the precocious children, a doted child and protected and loved by the various teacher elders. Suru even gave her famous, scarlet red silk. Senior sister is so powerful. Zhang Xiaofan couldn't help but exclaim. Song Daren smiled and said, "That's right, little junior sister is very clever. She also has an aptitude for cultivation. Whatever teacher and teacher's wife imparted to her, she understood upon listening, far surpassing as these senior brothers. Right now she is still young in her training, her level of attainment not there yet. With time, I'm sure her achievements will be limitless, much more than us. The hope of carrying forward Big Bamboo Valley's reputation will be on her now." After speaking, his eyes filled with hope, evidently extremely doted on this little junior sister. Following which, Song Daren instructed Zhang Xiaofan on some areas to note during cultivation and then at the end solemnly said, "Little junior brother, there is one last thing I must tell you. The value of our sect training is on the proper and orderly approach to cultivation. If you in greed and haste, I'm afraid the greed will never be satisfied and will also result in great calamity. Whether you will eventually succeed or not, it is all destined, one need not force it. Like the demons and evil spirits, their strange evil skills, unable to satisfy greed and all wanted to quickly attain, in the end most instead met with heaven's wrath, pitiful and sad. You must be careful." Zhang Xiaofan felt shocked, quickly said, "Yes big senior brother, I know." Song Daren nodded, stood up and said, "Then it will be for now. Taiji Cave is at the rear mountain, only disciples with Taiji Zan Qingwei 3rd level and above are able to enter and train. Before this, you will practice in your own room. This place is very tranquil, teacher and teacher's wife usually don't come here, you must work hard." Zhang Xiaofan nodded and said, "Thank you very much big senior brother." Song Daren smiled, patted his head and turned to go. Zhang Xiaofan sent him off and returned to his room, closed his door, an inexplicable excitement in his heart, even the morning tiredness had disappeared. He inhaled deeply, calmed down, slowly walked to his bed and following Song Daren's instructions to sit down for meditation, he closed his eyes and recalled his teachings on Jade Qing Realm 1st level from beginning till the end, was about to practice when suddenly he opened his eyes abruptly and cried out, "Not right." Song Daren had taught him the first level, which was the most simple training method with only 2 words, practice qi. The practitioner, under meditation, released their prohibitions and troubles in their minds, guided the spiritual energies of heaven and earth into and circulated around their bodies, taking this to breathe the same as heaven and earth, entering and appreciating and comprehending heaven and earth creation. If one could guide the spiritual energies to circulate in their bodies for 36 days consecutively, and one's own channels were already stable, they would be able to practice to an even higher realm. This type of cultivation method was originally Taoism, several thousand years of thoroughly tempered and honed method, would never be doubted to be wrong, but right now in Zhang Xiaofan's mind, it was like an urgent storm, shaking non-stopped. All these were because of what he had heard today, completely different from what Puji monk had imparted to him, the word formula and cultivation methods. The night before the tragic event at Grass Temple Village. When Puji imparted to him the word formula, he had clearly said, during the practice of the qi, one must cut off all connections to the outside world. Experience one's own nature, as said, the appearance of emptiness of all ways. Are eternal, are untainted and tainted, will not increase or decrease, are colorless within emptiness, without manipulations from thoughts, movements or consciousness, without eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body consciousness, without color, sound, smell, taste, touch, vision, and even without awareness, without ignorance, also without the extremity of ignorance, and also without aging, death, and without extremity of age and death, without the Four Noble Truths, without wisdom and without gains. From the Heart Sutra, such profound meanings, Zhang Xiaofan at this moment naturally couldn't understand, but these two practices being completely different, he could tell, and was in a state of panic, did not know what to do. Actually Zhang Xiaofan did not know, Taiji Zan Qingwei although was the supreme skill of Taoism, but Puji had a big hope on him. His entire lifetime of desire, the word formula that he had imparted, was Buddhism's supreme skill, great Brahman wisdom true way. These two methods, completely different way of cultivation, yet it must be told from the source. Buddhism and Taoism have a long history, never had any dealings with each other. The cultivation skills also started from each separated thoughts and flow processes. For Taoism, the gist of it was a Tao word, as said, from Tao came one, one becomes two, two become three, three become all things and all beings. All living things carry the yin and embrace yang, breathing is the harmony. From Tao Te Ching. Te Ching 5th chapter. Taoism teachings origins from Taoism's way of thoughts, even Taiji Zan Qingwei 3 realms namings, were also based on Taoism legends. Jade Pure One, Lord of Lingbao and Grand Pure Ones Jade Qing, Sheng Qing and Great Qing, also commonly known as the San Qing, 3 Pure Ones. Taoism cultivating the true way, technique was to exist together with heaven and earth, the body to be in nature, as the natural creation, to evolve into great powers. And contrary to Buddhism, the key was, mind which does not abide in anything, all dharmas are not apart from the self-consciousness. Translator's note. I referenced all sutra translations from the internet. Again quoted. Who would have thought that self-consciousness is originally pure? Who would have thought that self-consciousness does not create or extinguishes? Who would have thought that self-consciousness is self-sufficient? Who would have thought that self-consciousness is unwavering? Who would have thought that self-consciousness is able to give birth to all living beings? Diamond Sutra. First article. Buddhism cultivation, focused on experiencing the body, illuminating and seeing the 5 aggregates. One prajna produces 4,000 ways of wisdom. It was this meaning. The school of thoughts were different, their cultivation methods naturally ran counter to each other, just that for several thousand years each protected their own in secret. And right now the Qingyun sect Big Bamboo Valley, a little junior disciple Zhang Xiaofan, was having a big dilemma because of this. Which method exactly is correct? Zhang Xiaofan jumped off the bed, paced non-stopped in the room, felt his mind in turmoil, his thoughts in chaos, but he did not dare to ask others. In the end he could only sit dumbly on his bed, heaved a long sigh. He was not an intelligent person, born in a farmer's family, and at this young age, he did not have the knowledge or experience, and after half a day, he still couldn't think of the reasons. Until the end, he said to himself, forget it, anyway Puji teacher also did not talk about this kind of situation, I will just practice both of it will do. And so without further ado, his heart felt light too and again went up the bed, meditated and started on practicing Taiji Zan Qingwei. Just that although he thought it that simply, practicing it was another scene. Practicing qi he would have to open his entire body 7 meridians, guide the natural spiritual energies into his channels and stabilize his body vitality and channels. The great Brahman wisdom true way instead required one to go into seclusion, shut off all senses and view his own enlightenment. The two methods were completely different, and made Zhang Xiaofan suffered untold hardships. In the next 3 months, other than going up the mountains to chop bamboos, he practiced diligently on these two cultivations. However, although he had a small achievement with Taiji Zan Qingwei, his body senses opened and allowed the energies to enter. The next great Brahman wisdom true way required him to close up everything and entered into silence. His efforts in the beginning seemed to be wasted. After 3 months, Tian Bui out of a sudden, came to check on Zhang Xiaofan's progress. Unexpectedly, after questioning and testing him, he became much infuriated. With common knowledge, ordinary person practicing the Taiji Zan Qing Wei, with level 1 as basic, after 3 months there would be progress, able to guide the energies into the body and circulated it for 3 to 5 days. Unexpectedly, Zhang Xiaofan's poor aptitude was really rare. After 3 whole months, he couldn't even control opening his body apertures at will, moreover guiding the energies in or holding it in the body for a few days. Tian Bui glared fiercely and angrily at Zhang Xiaofan. The disciples beside all looked empathetic but did not dare to speak. Song Darren actually wanted to speak a few words but saw for himself Zhang Xiaofan's progress, casting shame on himself too, and so kept quiet. As for Tian Linger, she was giggling beside and watching the scene. Zhang Xiaofan looked ashamed, knelt before Tian Bui, not knowing where to hide, knowing that no matter how his teacher reprimanded him, he deserved it. However, after a long while, nobody spoke, not even Tian Bui. He felt puzzled, secretly glanced up but saw Tian Bui's infuriated face had turned into disappointment. It was really fulfilling the idioms, there is no grief greater than when the heart dies. Tian Bui flung his sleeve, shook his head and moved his plump body to the rear hall. The disciples looked at each other, did not understand. Song Darren was the longest with Tian Bui, indistinctly knew what Tian Bui was feeling, guessed his teacher had gave up on this little junior brother. For the past 3 months, Zhang Xiaofan, other than training, helped out here and there when he was free, he being an honest person, won the rest over. In the secluded mountains, even the spoiled Tian Linger suddenly had a playmate almost her age, also liked him even though she was often berating him. Song Darren, frowning, helped Zhang Xiaofan up, said, "Little junior brother, teacher is only momentarily angry, it is all right. As long as you continue to work hard, one day you will be recognized by teacher." Zhang Xiaofan felt ashamed, nodded his head and became even more hardworking. Every morning he traveled up the mountain with Tian Linger to chop bamboos. Usually the disciples after practicing for 3 months would have been able to chop down the black bamboos, but Zhang Xiaofan was only able to chop down his first bamboo after 6 months. However, rain or shine, he would continue to do his homework and he had become fitter as a result too. At least he was no longer panting like a cow after ascending the mountain. And since then, Tian Bui never asked about Zhang Xiaofan. Song Darren initially would inquire Zhang Xiaofan's progress, but as time passed, Zhang Xiaofan's progression was really beyond slow. Until the end, Song Darren also gave up, and never asked again. However, Zhang Xiaofan did not mind. He knew his own aptitude was bad and at times wondered if it was a result of practicing 2 schools of cultivation together, but every time he wondered, he would recall Puji's voice and face and felt a rush of heat in his heart and again persisted on. Although his trainings were extremely difficult, but his character was stubborn and determined, and so he bore it down. His living quarters was secluded. In the day he practiced Taiji Zan Qing Wei and late at night he practiced the great Brahman wisdom true way. Time passed by quickly that way, without realizing it was already 3 years. And in this period, Zhang Xiaofan also made history in Qingyun sect by having the worst record. He used 3 years in total, which was to say, 3 times a normal person's training duration, and finally completed the first level of Taiji Zan Qing Wei, Jade Qing Realm. He could control his body apertures at will, guide the spiritual energies and maintained in his body circulation for 36 days. However, what others did not know was, he at the same time practicing the great Brahman wisdom true way, touching on the initial path to controlling his internal energy, building a solid foundation. As Zhang Xiaofan nervously announced to the rest during dinner time, the Big Bamboo Valley disciples were dumbfounded, as if a 1,000-year-old iron tree had blossomed. Immediately everyone burst out laughing. Song Darren even picked up Zhang Xiaofan and threw him up in the air a few times, extremely delighted. And Tian Bui, who was sitting at the end of the table, watched coldly, snorted and quietly scolded, "Big idiot." In these 3 years, Zhang Xiaofan had grown to age 14. Because of the daily choppings, his body had also become muscular. Although younger by his senior sister by 2 years, he was already the same height as her. Tian Linger from a 13-years-old girl had grown to 16-years-old lady, her face even more beautiful, in her smiles and chats, beautiful and elegant. Tian Linger had always felt the other senior brothers were much older than her, lacking in youthful vigor, and so liked to hang out with this silly junior brother. For the 3 years they had become very close. But it has always been Tian Linger being superior. Zhang Xiaofan truly felt that his senior sister was much stronger than him, and although ordered him around most of the time, but whenever he was made fun of by the senior brothers, she would always be the first to stand up for him. The mountains were secluded but at the same time tranquil. Zhang Xiaofan had asked Tian Bui and Song Darren a few times regarding Grass Temple Village tragic incident, but until now nobody had a clue. As time passed, Zhang Xiaofan's heart also finally settled down. On this morning, Zhang Xiaofan as usual brought his axe and walked out, heading to the rear mountain. Tian Linger had already completed her homework 2 years ago and so no longer went along. Zhang Xiaofan had been going up alone for the past 2 years, but sometimes when Tian Linger felt bored, she would also tag along. Today Zhang Xiaofan did not see Tian Linger around and so went up by himself. Another 1 month he would also be ending his homework. He could now chop down 2 bamboos daily, but it was still far from Tian Linger, who could chop down at least 10 per day. A month ago, when he finally attained level 1, Song Darren imparted to him the 2nd level. He practiced for about a month, and although it was much more profound than level 1, but for some reason, he could indistinctly feel it was much easier than level 1. Like example, level 1 required him to control his body apertures and he only managed to have a small progression after 3 years, and level 2 required transform chi into essence, transforming the spiritual energies in his body into essence. According to Big Senior Brother, this was more than 10 times harder than level 1, but Zhang Xiaofan instead felt that it was surprisingly easy. Tracing it to the source, almost seemed to be connected to Great Brahman Wisdom True Way. These 3 years he had been practicing the Great Brahman Wisdom True Way without ceasing. His internal energy circulation was already at a certain level and essence belonged to internal energy. With the 3 years of foundation, Zhang Xiaofan progressed quickly. However, he did not trust in himself. Others needed 1 year and yet he took 3 years to train. This time most likely he had mistaken it. Therefore, he did not take note of it and instead continued to practice every day, and nobody came forward to inquire too. Chapter 10 Secluded Valley. Zhang Xiaofan went up the mountain, came to the familiar bamboo forest, the lush greenery, layers and layers, where the mountain breeze blew, the sea of bamboos rose in unison, like the waves of the sea. He immediately felt calm. He inhaled deeply a mouthful of the clear mountain air, stretched and picked up the axe and went in. The place he was heading was no longer the same place 3 years ago. It was the deepest part of the forest where the big sturdy bamboos were. The faint morning mist drifted within the forest, like a light veil, on the green bamboo leaves along the small path. There were sparkling dewdrops, clear and beautiful. After a while, he was within the sea of green. Here the black bamboo were lofty, their leaves lush, shot up straight to the sky. The sunlight penetrated down through the leaves' gaps, creating areas of shadows on the ground. Zhang Xiaofan glanced right and left, picked a big bamboo, made a gesture and started to chop. Coo, a muffled sound. Zhang Xiaofan felt pain in his head. He was hit on his forehead by something. He looked down. A pine nut was rolling on the ground. The whole area were all black bamboo and there were many bamboo shoots, but definitely not pine nuts. He pondered for a moment, a smile revealed on his lips, looked around and shouted, "Senior sister, is that you?" His voice echoed far into the forest. After a long time nobody answered. Zhang Xiaofan knew his senior sister was cheeky and liked to tease, was about to shout again when his head felt pain, this time extremely painful. It was another pine nut and above his head, a shriek "G was heard. Zhang Xiaofan bore the pain and looked up. On the bamboos, a gray-furred monkey crouched there, in its hands a few pine nuts, its tail hung from the bamboo branch. G, it laughed, looking like it was gloating at him. Zhang Xiaofan was stunned. He had never seen the monkey for the past 3 years, and at Big Bamboo Valley, almost everywhere was bamboo forest. Only at the northern side of the mountain deep in the valley there was a patch of wild pine and cypress trees. Seemed like this monkey came from there and for some reason came up the mountain today. Big Bamboo Valley was steep and precipitous, although it was not like Tongtian Peak penetrating into the sky, but it also reached into the clouds. Climbing up from the foot, there was almost no path. Most of the disciples usually flew up. Zhang Xiaofan's cultivation was still low. Other than chopping bamboo daily, he also heard from his senior brother's conversations that the deep valley at the rear mountain, the pine and cypress trees formed into a forest, the secluded valley hard to fathom, uninhabited. The forefathers of Big Bamboo Valley had once wielded their swords and explored the area, but there were only primitive forests, nothing suspicious, only wild animals and poisonous insects were abundant, but they never exited the valley, so it was peaceful for all these years. While he was pondering, he saw the monkey raising his hand. His heart jumped and he quickly shifted, and as expected, a pine nut smashed onto where he was previously. The monkey shrieked twice, apparently angry that Zhang Xiaofan avoided the hit. Zhang Xiaofan made a funny face at the monkey and ignored, walked away, thinking to himself that this monkey actually made fun of people by hitting them. It was rarely seen and really an ignorant beast. After 2 steps, he heard the sound of wind behind, unable to avoid in time. A sound, and the back of his head was hit by another pine nut. This time the blow was quite hard. Zhang Xiaofan felt darkness before his eyes, couldn't help but shout it out. The monkey clapped and laughed, wavering to and fro, extremely delighted. Zhang Xiaofan was infuriated, dashed over and shook the bamboo roughly. The big bamboo shook left and right, but that monkey, using only his tail to curl onto the branch, was totally unafraid and still laughed. Zhang Xiaofan saw that he could do nothing to the monkey, felt even more infuriated, took out his axe and started chopping. The monkey was unafraid and only watched him with interest from above. Zhang Xiaofan was sweating profusely from the chopping. After about 7 or 8 chops, he was about to succeed when he heard a shriek from above and looked up. That grey monkey swayed its tail, flew up and jumped to another bamboo beside, and suddenly a sound, threw another pine nut down. Zhang Xiaofan was incensed, disregarding whether the monkey understood him, pointed and shouted, "Come down if you dare." The monkey scratched its head, tilted its head and thought, most probably did not understand, and only laughed and made a funny face at Zhang Xiaofan. Zhang Xiaofan was so mad, but he could do nothing. He managed to finish his homework, but his head was hit 7 or 8 times by the monkey and was throbbing in pain. Zhang Xiaofan was boiling with rage, left the mountain angrily and ignored the monkey. Unexpectedly the monkey enjoyed it, and for the next few days when Zhang Xiaofan came to chop bamboo, it would hit him with the pine nuts for fun. Looking at his angry face, it was extremely happy. On this day at dinner time, Tian Linger pulled Zhang Xiaofan aside and asked, "Xiaofan, what happened to your head?" Zhang Xiaofan being bullied by the monkey for the past few days, his head had bruises all over, but he felt it was embarrassing to be made fun of by a monkey and so did not tell anyone. When his senior sister questioned him now, he hesitated but eventually still spoke the truth. Tian Linger's rosy lips widened, couldn't help but laugh out. 2 tiny dimples appeared on her cheeks, looking charming. Zhang Xiaofan seemed to be embarrassed, either by her laughing at him or something else, turned red and looked down. Tian Linger swiped on Zhang Xiaofan's shoulder, said, "Don't worry little junior brother, these few days Mum wanted me to train more in Taiji Cave in order to prepare for the competition 2 years later, didn't expect you will be bullied by a monkey. Tomorrow I will accompany you up, teach that monkey a lesson." Her tone sounded like someone senior, like consoling a kid, but Zhang Xiaofan was used to it, smiled bitterly and did not mind. The next day morning, Tian Linger really accompanied Zhang Xiaofan up the mountain. The cool mountain breeze blew over, Tian Linger wearing a red dress, just like the past where she went up to chop bamboo with Zhang Xiaofan, skipped ahead. Zhang Xiaofan followed behind, looking at that beautiful girl in front, like a red cloud, drifting gently in the mountain, following the wind, an indistinct fragrance drifting over. A thought suddenly came to his mind, if only he could walk on like this forever. While he was in his thoughts, Tian Linger was already far ahead, turned over and shouted, "Xiaofan, why are you so slow?" Zhang Xiaofan startled, turned red and quickly caught up. Both of them reached the forest. Tian Linger said, "Xiaofan, you go in first, I will follow behind." Zhang Xiaofan nodded, carried the axe and went in. After a few steps, he suddenly recalled to give some instructions to Tian Linger and turned around, but she was no longer there. He was stunned, felt lost and then shook his head, threw off those useless thoughts and headed deeper in. When he came to his destination, the forest was silent. Zhang Xiaofan looked around but couldn't find the monkey. He muttered to himself, could it be that monkey has spiritual intelligence, knew I have found a helper and did not dare to come. While thinking, he peered around but couldn't see the monkey figure, felt it was in vain and so started to chop at a nearby bamboo. Suddenly a familiar shriek above him. Zhang Xiaofan immediately reactively jumped back but his forehead felt pain, he was still not in time, his head throbbed. Zhang Xiaofan looked up, saw the monkey as usual, hung from the bamboo branch, laughing non-stopped. He felt delighted, pointed and laughed at that monkey, "Ha ha, you are finally here." His shout was not loud but the monkey was startled, thinking this person had always been jumping with rage after getting hit, but why was he being so happy today? Could it be after being hit for a few days, he didn't feel comfortable when he wasn't hit and instead happy after feeling the pain? At this moment, a red figure suddenly flashed. Tian Linger standing on the amber scarlet silk, flew over, like a flash of lightning, 5 fingers like claws, grabbed towards the monkey. But the monkey was extremely agile, it immediately reacted, its tail uncurled and it dropped down. Tianlinger had analyzed the areas left and right of it where it might escape to but did not expect it to drop down, and so grabbed nothing. Zhang Xiaofan at the ground also moved, but halfway through, the monkey stretched its limbs and grabbed a bamboo, wrapped around it, and then without stopping, as if knowing that the red-clothed girl's ability, leapt, jumping from one bamboo to another, intending to flee. Tianlinger, feeling competitive, shouted, "Pursue!" Her left hand moved, the amber scarlet silk flew over, Zhang Xiaofan also started to run. If they were on empty ground, with amber scarlet silk speed, Tianlinger would have caught that monkey, but now that they were in the thick forest, they faced obstacles. The monkey was intelligent, never ran in a straight line, leapt left and right. Tianlinger had to follow the monkey and also to avoid the bamboo, extremely cumbersome. As for Zhang Xiaofan, he could only pursue on the ground, not helping much. Both of them chased after the monkey gg shrieked, not knowing for how long. Zhang Xiaofan gradually started panting heavily, felt exhausted, most likely they had gone very far. But the green lush forest ahead seemed endless, layer after layer. Zhang Xiaofan felt his throat dry, suddenly saw the gray figure flashed and dropped down. He was delighted and immediately became alert, dashed up, but at this moment, Tianlinger shouted, "Be careful!" Before Zhang Xiaofan, a cliff abruptly appeared, he quickly stopped his steps and almost fell over. He calmed down and saw a deep valley below, thick mist lingered over the valley, unable to see clearly over it, and around the valley, it was no longer bamboo, instead different types of wild trees, mostly pines, seemed like they had came to that secluded valley. Zhang Xiaofan watched that grey monkey drop down, replayed his old tricks, grabbed a branch, swayed and broke the fall, leapt ahead. He was just panicking where he heard the sound of wind. Tianlinger flew over, stretched out her hand and said, "Come up." Zhang Xiaofan without hesitation, grabbed her hand and went up. The silk sank for a moment but soon recovered. This was the first for Zhang Xiaofan. He was unsure and Tianlinger pulled him to her back, said, "Hold my waist, quick." Zhang Xiaofan followed her instructions. Tianlinger sped forward, the both of them on the amber scarlet silk, dashed into the valley, chasing after the monkey. The sound of the wind was sharp. Zhang Xiaofan couldn't even open his eyes, and the silk under his feet didn't feel that sturdy, as if he could fall any time. Feeling afraid, he tightened his grip on Tianlinger. The red clothes like clouds drifted before him. His senior sister's back was like the nine-heaven celestial fairy, extremely beautiful, and a faint fragrance also drifted over. He felt happy and hoped that time stopped there. Tianlinger didn't expect that the young boy was having all those thoughts behind her, concentrated fully on that grey monkey in front. She was doted on and praised by her parents and senior brothers, her character rather proud. If she couldn't catch up to that monkey today, that would surely be unacceptable. And in the secluded valley, between the trees, a grey figure ahead, red figure tightly pursuing, wavering here and there. And so it was another hour or so of pursue. That grey monkey, not knowing which breed it was, seemed not exhausted at all, was still speeding ahead. And Tianlinger, after pursuing for a distance, became familiar with traversing the forest and so gradually increased her speed. The grey monkey escaped deeper into the valley. Zhang Xiaofan peered ahead and saw the forest ahead was thinning, light started to shine brighter from above, indistinctly seemed like an empty space with sounds of water. The monkey's shrieks sounded more urgent, seemed like it didn't expect the two of them to continue pursuing it, but it had no other routes and so had to continue. Not long after, it suddenly became brighter before them. It was really an open space. The ground were all broken stones and a tiny small lake in the middle, water rippling, flowing towards the west. The grey monkey clearly hesitated for a moment when it arrived here, but as its pursuers were about to reach, it had no choice but to land and run ahead. However, for some reason, its steps became extremely slow, looking like it was taking a stroll. Even though it was so, it was still taking steps and moving ahead. Zhang Xiaofan saw it and felt strange, but Tianlinger was only concentrating on avoiding obstacles while following the monkey's figure and did not notice what's happening on the ground. As she saw the monkey was just ahead, she was delighted and with a shout, headed in and straight for the monkey. As she was about to catch the monkey, Zhang Xiaofan suddenly felt his mind popped, his body wavered on its own, a nauseous feeling from his 5 internal organs, straight to his head. Instantly his entire body started to shake. Zhang Xiaofan was shocked, did not know how to react to this, and at this moment, his chest felt warm, a burst of warm energy dispersed, protecting his heart and swiftly suppressing the nauseous feeling. Zhang Xiaofan looked down, felt that warm energy emitting from that deep purple bead given by Puji, and at that moment, Tianlinger's body wavered, went slack and fell. Both of them were still in the midair. When Tian Linger lost control, amber scarlet silk immediately stopped, both of them fell from the sky. Zhang Xiaofan rolled a few times on the ground, felt pain from the fall, but he didn't care about that, hurriedly shouted even before he stood up, Senior sister, are you all right? However, Tian Linger only lay motionless there, her face pale, cold sweat covered her brow, she had already fainted. Zhang Xiaofan turned pale from the shock, guessed it must be because of that strange feeling just now, ignored his own pain and ran over to Tian Linger. After calling her a few times, she was still not responding. Zhang Xiaofan looked around, saw in the center of the lake, within 3 zhang, there was not a single grass, but after 3 zhang, lush greenery thrived. He clenched his teeth, controlled the nauseous feeling that surfaced frequently, carried Tian Linger on his back and also the amber scarlet silk and headed outwards. Just this 2 zhang distance, it was not even worth mentioning at usual times, but under the frequent attacks of nauseous feeling, it became extremely difficult. With difficulty he managed to walk out of the 3 zhang, came to a big pine tree and that feeling instantly disappeared. Zhang Xiaofan placed Tian Linger down, his breathing heavy, looking over at the lake. That gray monkey was still there, not moving anymore, its face in pain, glancing over here, its eyes pleading. Zhang Xiaofan frowned, finally gave in, stood up and walked over again. After a few steps, that nauseous feeling again came back, at the same time that warm feeling in his chest surfaced, suppressing the uncomfortable feeling. Zhang Xiaofan slowly came to the monkey, he was already sweating buckets, the gray monkey looked at him, motionless, seemed like it was also suppressed down. Zhang Xiaofan inhaled deeply, grabbed the monkey and started to turn back. The monkey at that moment seemed obedient, lay quietly in his embrace. He managed to walk out and came to Tian Linger, that nauseous feeling disappeared. Zhang Xiaofan placed the monkey down, fell sitting down and panted heavily, that monkey also let out a breath of relief, crouched on the ground, its eyes peering around, but it did not run, only looked at Zhang Xiaofan. Zhang Xiaofan opened his shirt, took out the bead which was hung from a red string and looked carefully. The exterior of the purple bead had turned pale purple, the inner dark green energy seemed to be stimulated, its rotating speed increased 10 times, spinning unceasingly, crashing against the exterior of the bead. Like before, every time the energy crashed, a Buddhism sign, one would appear to block it. And that warm feeling that saved Zhang Xiaofan, came from this sign. However, Zhang Xiaofan clearly noticed, compared to 3 years ago, that one sign had faded.